General Assembly resolution on the protection of civilians and the upholding of legal and humanitarian obligations, which calls for an immediate end to the blockade of Gaza, the opening of all border crossings, and the unhindered delivery of humanitarian aid to the Palestinian civilian population. Thus, efforts by the international community are critical in creating conducive conditions for the resumption of direct negotiations between the two parties based on mutual respect and mutual recognition. In closing, the LAPDR reiterates its unwavering commitment in supporting all efforts aimed at peaceful resolution of the question of Palestine. We call upon all parties concerned to exercise maximum restraint, respect international law, and work sincerely toward the shared goal of lasting peace and stability in the region. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant de la République démocratique populaire Lao et je donne la parole à Monsieur le représentant de la Malaisie.
Thank you, co-chairs. The full version of this statement will be uploaded on the website. I thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France for leading this important process at a time when the entire world is outraged by Israel's genocidal war in Gaza, and the two-state solution is in grave peril. Co-chairs, Malaysia wishes to put forth 3 points. First, the solution to this long-standing conflict must be based on international law and the UN Charter. International law, the UN Charter and relevant UN resolutions, as well as rulings and opinions of the International Court of Justice, ICJ, must be the guiding principles in our endeavor. Most importantly, we must be united in support of the inalienable right to self-determination of the Palestinian people through a sovereign state of Palestine based on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. The recognition of the State of Palestine is a crucial step to protect the two-state solution. We commend countries that have made the bold decision to recognize the State of Palestine and urge others that have not to do so urgently. Israel's occupation of Palestinian lands, which has been deemed illegal by the ICJ, must end. Israel's attempts to forcibly displace Palestinians or change the demographics of the occupied Palestinian territories must be categorically opposed. We must stop the supply of arms, munitions, and items that enable Israel to further expand and entrench its occupation. Targeted sanctions must be imposed on those who incite hatred and violence, illegal settlers, organizations, and businesses that support or profit from the illegal settlements. Malaysia, since December 2023, has banned Israel-flagged ships and ships bound for Israel from docking in Malaysian ports. This is another tangible step that can be taken by all. We must also end Israel's impunity. Malaysia has participated in proceedings at the ICJ aimed at protecting the Palestinian people. We stand ready to participate in future legal processes to ensure accountability and attain justice for the Palestinian people. Secondly, we must protect and strengthen the central role of the United Nations. We must unambiguously reject Israel's attempts to undermine the UN. This includes standing up against Israel's actions to malign, discredit, and intimidate UN officials, including special mandate holders. Israel must be pressured to fully cooperate with the UN, especially by allowing unimpeded access for humanitarian missions through UN mechanism. We condemn the death trap that is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has caused the death of about 1,000 Palestinians while seeking food aid. We must defend and support UNRWA. Malaysia has been a regular contributor to UNRWA and is exploring a multi-year funding agreement to ensure predictability of UNRWA's funding. Third, we must ensure the viability of the Palestinian state. Malaysia supports a UN-mandated stabilization mission with the concurrence of the State of Palestine. Malaysia stands ready to contribute peacekeeping personnel to support such a mission. We also support the Arab OIC reconstruction plan and are ready to participate in its implementation. Under the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program, we are ready to offer tailored capacity building programs to Palestinian officials to help strengthen Palestinian institutions. Additionally, we will also encourage collaborations involving private sectors, universities, and civil society. Co-chairs, the two-state solution is and remains the only internationally recognized solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It is totally unacceptable that 78 years since the adoption of General Assembly Resolution 181, only one of the two states has enjoyed independence and full membership to the UN, while the other, the State of Palestine, continues to be denied its independence and full membership to the UN. For more than 7 decades, the Palestinians have been systematically
Excellencies, Sri Lanka appreciates France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in driving this much-needed multilateral effort to promote a peaceful resolution of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. While Sri Lanka condemns the brutal attacks on 7th October 2023, the unending catastrophic situation we see on a daily basis since then has resulted in unimaginable human suffering in the occupied Palestine territory. The overwhelming majority of dead are women and children. Sri Lanka's solidarity with the Palestinian people remains consistent. The only realistic and lasting way to achieve peace is through a two-state solution. The Middle East, which was once a cradle of civilizations and a land of profound spiritual significance, today is facing peril. Excellencies, the end of starvation in Gaza is also as important as agreeing on an immediate ceasefire. Sri Lanka is alarmed that the civilians lining up for humanitarian aid in Gaza are being killed. We urge the authorities to lift restrictions on aid operations in the occupied Palestinian territory and call for a return to UN-led delivery mechanisms. The UN and its agencies must be allowed to perform their crucial mandates. Sri Lanka recognizes the central role played by UNRWA as the legitimate body tasked with supporting Palestine refugees. In this regard, we deeply regret the loss of over 300 lives of UNRWA staff. UN agencies or their staff should not be victims or subjects of harassment for performing their mandate under international obligations. Co-chairs, as the chair of the Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the Palestinian people and other Arabs of the occupied territories, it is our firm belief that peace in the OPT will remain untenable as long as the underlying issues such as occupation, blockade, and the refusal to recognize Palestine's self-determination continue to exist. Therefore, we must recognize the legitimate and inalienable right of the Palestinian people to statehood. Sri Lanka has consistently supported a just and comprehensive negotiated political settlement to the Palestine issue in line with UN resolutions, leading to two states living side by side based on the 1967 borders. Co-chairs, Sri Lanka recognizes the legitimate security concerns of both Israeli and Palestinian people and acknowledges the suffering that people of both sides, have experienced due to decades of violence and conflict. This is the exact reason why Sri Lanka maintains that dialogue remains the only viable option to effectively address the issues of both parties and the region as a whole. In the interest of achieving a peaceful solution for this long-standing dispute, we suggest to consider the following immediate steps to save the lives of thousands of affected innocent civilians. First, an immediate ceasefire. Second, release of all hostages of both parties, including children and women, as a catalyst for building trust. Third, allow UNRWA and other UN agencies to carry out their mandates in Palestine, including in OPS, without any obstruction. Fourth, a UN-monitored mechanism to disarm all military groups in Palestine. Fifth, immediate halt of new settler programs in OPT. Sixth, Palestine's full membership in the United Nations, which has been endorsed by the UN General Assembly at the 10th Emergency Special Session. Excellencies, despite the deep-rooted tensions and complicated realities, decades of global agreement point to the two-state solution as the most viable path ahead. This approach is not just a matter of political practicality, but based on historical context, legal principles, and the shared right of Israelis and Palestinians to statehood. Sri Lanka hopes that this conference will move beyond expressions of support or censure and propel action towards peace for the region. I thank you.
Je remercie le représentant du Sri Lanka pour son intervention et je donne la parole à Monsieur le représentant de Malte.
Co-chairs, I wish to commend your efforts in organizing this conference in a challenging context. This is a conversation and an opportunity for a broader reflection. Excellencies, Malta has been consistent in upholding the two-state solution as the only feasible, just, and sustainable path towards lasting peace in the Middle East. There is now a real risk that the prospect of a two-state solution could slip away. Last year, the International Court of Justice outlined the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination as a peremptory norm of international law. Like many others in this chamber, Malta has consistently supported this inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. It is for this reason that the government of Malta has taken the principled decision to formally recognize the state of Palestine at the upcoming UN General Assembly in September. This decision reflects Malta's commitment to international law, justice, and the right of peoples to self-determination. We believe that recognition is not merely symbolic, it is a concrete step towards the realization of a just and lasting peace. Such concrete steps are necessary if we are to live up to the spirit of what we advocate. It is also clear that the only way of achieving a sovereign, autonomous Palestinian state in control of its own fixed borders is through negotiation. In particular, we believe that this will require not only political willingness to negotiate from both sides, but the existence of a legitimate Palestinian government entrusted with a popular mandate. Excellencies, current issues must also be addressed with alacrity. Palestinians must immediately be given access to food, electricity, fuel, medical supplies, and other key assistance if we are to prevent even more lives needlessly being lost. In this respect, Malta welcomes the increase in aid entering Gaza over the last days, and we hope that the humanitarian aid which we ourselves have dispatched with the help of the government of Cyprus and UNOPS, will soon make its way through the Amaltea maritime corridor and reach Gaza. The Palestinians, particularly children, are suffering greatly. They have fallen and are falling victim to starvation and ill health. This must stop. An immediate and durable ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and unimpeded humanitarian access into Gaza will be vital for any peace-building process to succeed. A fully functioning state reflecting the aspirations of the Palestinian people should not be merely a geographic and political expression. It should serve to bring about the social and economic emancipation of the Palestinians. Over the long term, the people of Gaza need hope, governance, and reconstruction. To this end, Malta reiterates its support for the staged approach at the center of the Gaza Recovery, Reconstruction, and Development Plan, and despite limited resources, we are committed to provide funding for this process. Like many others, we also believe that Hamas should not form part of the equation in Gaza's future governance. We are witnessing an alarming acceleration in the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, an expansion that not only violates international law, but also gravely undermines the prospects for a just and lasting peace. Tackling settlements in this region and their expansion is critical to the viability of a Palestinian state. Excellencies, this conference has demonstrated our common realization that platitudes and rhetoric will not get us any closer to peace. Rather, what is needed is a roadmap of concrete actions which will ensure the continued viability of the two-state solution. My government is committed to taking 3 specific actions towards this goal. Malta will continue to lend this political support, including in multilateral fora, to all initiatives. We can say that the humanitarian assistance
I thank the distinguished representative of Malta for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of Nigeria.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, Nigeria welcomes the convening of this high-level conference to address the protracted challenges of the two-state solution and express profound appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Republic of France for their efforts that culminated in holding this very important meeting on the implementation of the resolutions pertaining to the question of Palestine and the two-state solution, in line with relevant UNGA resolutions. The protracted and unfortunate situation in Gaza and other Palestinian territories cannot be ignored anymore. The lingering Israel-Palestinian conflict indicates that the international community has failed to live up to the spirit and aspiration of the United Nations to rid the world of inequality, violence, and illegal occupation. Nigeria recalls the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the legal consequences arising from Israel's policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territory, and wishes to state that Israel has an obligation to bring an end to its presence in this Palestinian territory in order to actualize the cause of self-determination of the Palestinian people. Nigeria has made several efforts in the past to play a mediating role in the conflict at the highest level, including visiting both Israel and Palestine, during which time we call on the two sides to return to the negotiating table. Therefore, as we underscore the importance of this gathering, Nigeria wishes to call for concrete follow-ups of these important initiatives that could culminate in the realization of a two-state solution and end the age-long conflict. The United Nations, which has remained a beacon of hope and a platform for collaboration in an increasingly interconnected world, must uphold its responsibilities. The role of the United Nations as a catalyst for change will remain crucial, and Nigeria will continue to strongly support the Palestinian cause while reiterating the call that the occupied territory must abide by their responsibilities under international law. Nigeria further reiterates its position that there is no justification for the carnage that is currently going on in the occupied Palestinian territory. The loss of human lives that continues to rise every day is unacceptable, even as we stress that the Palestinian people deserve their independence. This, we believe, is fundamental for security, justice, and peace for all those living in the region. Nigeria also reiterates the call on the Security Council to bring about a permanent solution to the Palestinian question by ensuring the realization of the two-state solution, inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and the independence and sovereignty of the State of Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders. Nigeria appreciates and supports Egypt and Qatar in their ongoing diplomatic efforts to reach an agreement for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, and the Arab Islamic plan for early recovery, reconstruction, and development of Gaza, which was presented by Egypt in full coordination with the State of Palestine and endorsed by both the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Nigeria wishes to highlight the vital and important role of the United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, along with other United Nations agencies in alleviating the plight of Palestinian people, and urges the international community to support the agency through ensuring that its finances are sustainable and predictable for a continuity in its humanitarian work. Mr. Chair, in conclusion, Nigeria, while reiterating the call for the admission of the State of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations with all rights and privileges, hopes that today's forum could be the enduring legacy of multilateral efforts in the realization of a political horizon of achieving a just and lasting solution for the people of Palestine on this basis of the two-state solution, with the people living side by side in peace and security within secure and recognized pre-1967 borders. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Nigeria for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Mauritius.
Chairs, distinguished delegates, Mauritius welcomes this international conference as a way forward on an issue that poses a serious threat to peace and security and has given rise to a man-made humanitarian crisis in Palestine that worsens by the day. The co-conveners have rightly set the theme of the conference as the implementation of the two-state solution, which has long been advocated by the international community as an essential condition for peace and stability in the region. The implementation of the two-state solution does not mean the creation of a new state. Palestine meets the criteria for statehood under international law. Indeed, it has already been recognized as a state by the vast majority of states and by the United Nations, which admitted Palestine as an observer state. The announcements by France and the UK that they intend to join over 2/3 of UN members in recognizing the state of Palestine is a significant step going forward. It is our view that the term two-state solution refers to the mutual recognition of two existing states and their respective sovereignty with secure and recognized borders living alongside each other. This would also put an end to the unlawful settlements and annexations and thus provide for recognized borders in line with international law. Furthermore, it should enable the state of Palestine to take its rightful place as a full-fledged member state of the United Nations. Mauritius reiterates its unwavering support for the two-state solution and calls on the international community to spare no effort in its implementation. The need for this solution has become still more urgent as we hear of the persistent, harrowing accounts of the unimaginable and horrific situation in Gaza. the loss of innocent lives, and the dehumanization of the population who are subjected to displacement, disease, and starvation. Mauritius will continue to support all initiatives at the UN to bring a just, peaceful, comprehensive, and lasting solution to the conflict. As the United Nations pursues efforts to make itself more responsive to the needs of future generations, the principles and goals set out in the UN Charter provide a solid framework for the implementation of the two-state solution. Member states' obligations to respect international law, including human rights and humanitarian law, are cardinal principles that must be observed at all times. Respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the political independence of states are foundational norms. As the United Nations celebrates its 80th anniversary, all member states need to uphold the UN Charter and reaffirm the fundamental principles of our organization. This conference today is a decisive moment to bolster multilateralism and reaffirm our resolve to pursue global peace and security by bringing an end to the violence and decades-long human suffering in Palestine. Let us commit together to create the necessary conditions for durable peace and prosperity in the region. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Mauritius for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
Co-chairs, this high-level international conference is taking place at a critical juncture when the just cause of the Palestinian people for realizing right to self-determination and establishing independent states is seriously challenged. We express strong hope that this high-level international conference will mark an important occasion in ending historic injustice once and for all. Co-chairs, the just and peaceful solution to the question of the Palestine is imperative for establishing durable peace and stability in the Middle East and beyond. It is our shared responsibility to facilitate a just, comprehensive, and lasting solution to the question of Palestine in accordance with the UN Charter, the relevant UN resolutions, and international law. On that note, my delegation would like to highlight the following position. First, international efforts should be intensified to end Israeli outright violation of UN Charter and international law without any further delay. In defiance of the strong protests and condemnation of the international community, Israel continued to commit war crime and crime against humanity in occupied Palestine territory, including in Gaza Strip. We join the international community in strongly condemning such crimes and urging Israel to halt immediately the barbaric atrocity against innocent Palestinian civilians. Moreover, Israel is more bluntly making the moves to expand illegal settlement activity, forcibly displace Palestinian people, and seize Palestinian territory, including in Gaza Strip. The decisive steps are urgently needed to reject any attempted moves to change the demographic and territorial character of the occupied Palestinian territory in flagrant violation of the UN Charter and international law. Second, unilateral and double standard approach should be categorically rejected. In this regard, we draw your attention to unilateral policy, hypocrisy, and double standard of the United States, which has long connived at and shared Israel barbaric atrocity and illegal territorial expansion. While much talking about the ceasefire and mediation and acting peacemaker on one hand, the United States, on the other hand, systematically blocked peaceful settlement of question of Palestine by abusing its veto power and giving green light to the Israeli mass killing through provision of the military, financial, and logistical support under the absurd pretext of the Israel's right to self-defense. The international community should sharpen the vigilance against and resolutely reject unilateral and double standard moves of the United States in favor of Israel. Last but not least, the practical and immediate step should be taken to realize the right to self-determination of the Palestinian people. As of now, more than 140 member states recognize the state of Palestine, and we join in the calling for urging member states which have not yet recognized the state of Palestine to do so, to pave the way for just and peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. At the same time, admission of the state of Palestine to full membership of the United Nations should be unconditionally fast-tracked. The attitude towards recognition of the state of Palestine and its admission to the full membership of the United Nations is a litmus test to determine the position on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and realization of the inalienable rights of Palestinian people. Taking this opportunity, we reaffirm our unwavering support for and solidarity with the Palestinian people in their just struggle to terminate Israel's illegal occupation and to realize the rights and including establishment of an independent state with East Jerusalem as its capital and admission of the state of Palestine as a full-fledged UN member state. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of Mongolia.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, and distinguished delegates. At the outset, I wish to sincerely thank the co-chairs of the conference and the co-chairs of the working groups for their tireless efforts to make this conference possible. At this critical moment in history, Mongolia reaffirms its steadfast support for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the urgent need to implement two-state solution in accordance with international law and relevant United Nations resolutions. Mongolia firmly supports the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, including their right to an independent and sovereign state of Palestine, living side by side in peace and security with the state of Israel. We believe that the two-state solution based on the pre-1960 borders and in line with international law and relevant UN resolutions remains the only viable path forward, achieving just and lasting peace in the Middle East. We underscore that the immediate and unconditional permanent ceasefire respected by all parties is a vital precondition for the viable implementation of the two-state solution with no role of Hamas in it. Peace cannot take root amid ongoing violence, destruction, and profound human suffering. The presumption of credible political process must begin with silencing guns and safeguarding civilian lives. We stress that all parties to the conflict must comply with their obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law. Violations of these obligations not only undermine prospects for peace, but also erode the fundamental norms of our shared humanity. Mongolia acknowledges the critical role of the United Nations, regional actors, and broader international community in advancing peace efforts and promoting a sustainable political solution. We welcome the initiative of the League of Arab States and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation on the Recovery and Reconstruction, which demonstrates the important regional leadership in laying the foundations for stability and sustainable development. We also welcome the establishment of the Global Alliance for the implementation of two-state solutions and the convening of this conference as a timely and necessary effort to move from words to actions. The time has come not to revive another process, but to implement once and for all what the international community has long agreed upon, the realization of two states living side by side in peace, security, and mutual recognition. Let us be guided by the principles of international law and solidarity. Mongolia stands ready to support all genuine efforts that contribute to comprehensive just and lasting peace in the Middle East. I thank you.
Je remercie
I
Monsieur le
thank
représentant
the
de la
representative
Mongolie
of
pour son
Mongolia
intervention.
for
Je
his
donne la
statement. I now
parole
give the floor
à Monsieur le
to the
représentant d'Oman.
representative of Oman.
الرئيسان المشاركان
Co-chairs,
تتقدم سلطنة عمان
the Sultanate of
بمستهل
Oman
كلمتها
extends at the
بخالص
outset
الشكر
its
والتقدير
sincere thanks and
لخادم
appreciation
الحرمين
to the
الشريفين
custodian of the two
الملك
holy
سلمان بن عبد
shrines,
العزيز
King
ملك
Salman bin
المملكة العربية
Abdulaziz
السعودية
Al
الشقيقة
Saud of the sisterly
وإلى
kingdom
فخامة
of Saudi
الرئيس
Arabia, and
إيمانويل
to His
ماكرون
Excellency
رئيس
President
الجمهورية
Emmanuel
الفرنسية
Macron,
الصديقة
President of the
على
Friendly French
قيادتهما
Republic, for
لهذه
their
المبادرة
appreciated effort
التي تجسد
in
التزاما حقيقيا بتحقيق السلام العادل والدائم
calling
في
for
منطقتنا
this conference,
وما
which
نعبر عن تقديرنا
represents a
العميق
real commitment to
لكل
achieving
من
a just
أسهم
and
في
lasting
تنظيم
peace in
هذا
our
الحدث
region. We also
من
express
أجل
our deep
مستقبل
appreciation to
أفضل
everyone who
للمنطقة
contributed to organizing
وشعوبها.
this event for a better future
وترحب
for the
سلطنة
region and
عمان
its people. The
بالإعلان
Sultanate of
التاريخي
Oman
لفخامة الرئيس ماكرون عزم
welcomes the
فرنسا
historic announcement by
الاعتراف
His
بدولة
Excellency
فلسطين.
President Emmanuel Macron
كما
of France
ترحب بلادي
of the intention to
بإعلان كير
recognize the state
ستارمر
of
رئيس
Palestine,
الوزراء
and we
البريطاني
also welcome
عزم
the
بلاده
announcement by the
الاعتراف بدولة
British Prime Minister
فلسطينية خلال انعقاد
of his
الجمعية
country's
العامة
intention to
المتحدة
recognize the
القادمة.
Palestinian state during the upcoming United
تدعو
Nations
سلطنة
General Assembly.
عمان
The Sultanate
بقية
of
دول
Oman
العالم
calls upon the
إلى
rest of
التي لم تعترف
the
بعد الدولة
states that have not
الفلسطينية
yet
أن
recognized the
تبادر
Palestinian
إلى
state
ذلك
to do
الاعتراف
so
فورا.
immediately.
الحضور الكريم
Honorable
نقف اليوم أمام جمعكم
presence,
الكريم
today we stand before
حاملين
your
رسالة
kind
سلطنة عمان
gathering,
الثابتة
bearing the
في
firm
قيمها
message of the
ومواقفها
Sultanate of Oman
الإنسانية
in its values
الداعمة
and
للحق
humanitarian
الفلسطيني
positions in
في
support
تقرير المصير
of the
وإقامة
Palestinian
دولة
right to
مستقلة ذات
self-determination
سيادة
and the establishment of an
عاصمتها القدس
independent and
الشرقية
sovereign state
بموجب
with
القانون
East
الدولي.
Jerusalem as its capital
وعليه
under international law.
إن حل الدولتين هو السبيل الوحيد
Therefore, the
والعادل
two-state solution
لتحقيق
is the
السلام
only
الشامل والدائم في
and
الشرق الأوسط
just way to achieve
وهو
a
الحل
comprehensive and
الذي
lasting
يستند
peace
إلى
in the Middle
قرارات
East,
الشرعية
a solution
الدولية
that is based on the
وجسدته
resolutions of
مبادرة
international
السلام
legitimacy
العربية.
and has been
الحضور
embodied in the
الكرام
Arab Peace Initiative.
نرى اليوم أن الأمل في
Ladies and
السلام
gentlemen,
يتآكل
today we
بفعل
see that the hope for
السياسات
peace is being
الإسرائيلية
eroded
الأحادية
by unilateral
وتوسع
Israeli
الاستيطان
policies,
اللامشروع
the
على الأراضي
expansion of illegal
الفلسطينية المحتلة
settlements in the occupied
ناهيك
Palestinian
عن الوضع
territory, not to
الإنساني
mention the
المأساوي
tragic
في
humanitarian
قطاع
situation
غزة
in
والضفة
the
الغربية.
Gaza Strip and the West
كما لا
Bank.
يخفى أن طبيعة
The nature
السياسات
of the
التي
current
تنتهجها
Israeli government's policies
تنتهجها الحكومة الإسرائيلية الحالية والتي تعد الأكثر
as the most
تطرفا منذ
extreme in
عقود
decades,
تفاقم من
further
تعقيدات المشهد
complicates the landscape
وتعيق بصورة
and
مباشرة
directly
كل
hampers
الجهود الرامية
all effort
إلى إعادة
to
إطلاق
relaunch
مسار السلام.
the peace process.
وندين
We
بأشد
condemn
العبارات
in the strongest
مصادقة
terms
الكنيسة
the
الإسرائيلية
adoption by the
على
Israeli
مشروع قرار
Knesset
يدعو
of
إلى
a
فرض
draft
السيادة
decision
الإسرائيلية
calling
على
for the
الضفة
imposition of
الغربية في
Israeli
فلسطين
sovereignty over
وذلك
the
في
West Bank
تحد
in Palestine
جديد
in a
لأحكام
new
القانون الدولي
defiance of the
وقرارات الشرعية
provisions of
الدولية
international law and
وتقويض
resolutions of
متعمد
international
لفرص السلام في
legitimacy,
الشرق
and a
الأوسط.
deliberate
وفي ظل
undermining
هذا
of the
الواقع
chances for peace in the
فإن
Middle East.
الحديث عن حل الدولتين لم يعد
In
كافيا
light of this
بل
reality,
ينبغي أن يترجم إلى
talking about the
خطة
two-state solution
قابلة
is no longer
للتنفيذ
enough, but should be
ومدعومة
translated into a
بإرادة
viable
سياسية
plan
جادة
backed by serious political
وإجراءات
will
عملية
and practical
وفق
measures
مرجعيات
based
الدولة
and friendly
شجاعة
states that
ومسؤولة
have taken
بالاعتراف
courageous
بدولة
and
فلسطين
responsible steps
وهو
to
اعتراف
recognize
لا
the state of
يمثل فقط
Palestine.
موقفا
A
قانونيا
recognition
وسياسيا
that represents
بل
not only a
تعبيرا
legal and political
أخلاقيا
position, but
عن
also a
الانحياز
moral
للعدالة
expression
وحقوق
of
الإنسان. إن هذه
siding with
المواقف
justice and
تعزز
human
من فرص
rights.
السلام
These
الحقيقي
positions enhance
وتشكل
the
ضغطا
chances for real
إيجابيا
peace and
نحو
constitute
إنهاء
positive
الاحتلال
pressure
وتحقيق
towards ending the
تسوية عادلة.
occupation and achieving a just
ومن هذا المنبر
settlement.
نجدد
From
الدعوة
this
لبقية
rostrum,
دول
we
العالم
renew the call
خاصة
for the rest of
التي
the
تؤمن
world,
بمبادئ القانون الدولي
especially
وحق الشعوب في
those
تقرير
countries that
مصيرها
believe in the
إلى أن
principles of
تحذو
international
هذا
law and the right
الحذو
of peoples to
وتمكين الشعب
self-determination
الفلسطيني
to
من
follow
نيل
suit and
اعتراف
enable the
دولي
Palestinian
كامل
people to
بدولته
gain full
المستقلة
international
على أرضه.
recognition of their independent
كما
state
نؤكد
on their land.
على ضرورة منح دولة فلسطين
We
العضوية
also
الكاملة في
stress
الأمم المتحدة
that the state of
وهو حق
Palestine join
مشروع ودافع لعملية السلام.
be
وبما
granted
يجسد
full membership
ترجمة
in the
حقيقية
United
للمواقف
Nations.
إلى واقع عملي.
Admitting the State of Palestine as a full
وتشكر
member of
سلطنة عمان
this
الجهود
organization is a
الحثيثة
legitimate right and
التي
a
بذلتها
motivation
المجموعات
for the peace
الثمانية
process and reflects the
التي
real
كان
translation of the
لعملها
positions into
الدور
practical
الفاعل
realities.
والبناء.
And we are
وأسهمت
grateful for
في
the
وضع
tireless
ركائز
effort made by
المخطط
the 8
الدولي
working groups
المستدام
whose
لهذا
work
الأمر
played an active
دعما
and constructive
لسلام
role and
عادل
contributed to
ودائم.
laying the foundation for
الحضور
sustained
الكرام،
international
نحن
engagement
في
for this
حاجة
conference
اليوم
in support of a
لا
just and
تجاوز
lasting
مرحلة
peace.
الخطاب.
The microphone has been cut.
Je remercie Monsieur le
I
représentant
thank
d'Oman
the
pour son
representative of
intervention.
Oman for his statement.
Je donne maintenant la parole à Monsieur
I
le
now give the
représentant
floor
du Tadjikistan.
to the representative of Tajikistan.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, Tajikistan welcomes the convening of this timely high-level conference. We commend the co-chairs, France and Saudi Arabia, for their leadership and for bringing the international community together to discuss the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. We are deeply concerned by the continued violence and the worsening humanitarian situation in Palestine. The toll on civilians, especially women and children, is devastating. Prospects for peace are growing increasingly fragile. Tajikistan supports the peaceful resolution of conflicts. We believe in dialogue, mutual respect, and the adherence to international law. Sustainable peace in Palestine depends on inclusive political processes guided by the principles of the UN Charter. We also believe that the only viable path to a just and lasting peace lies in the full implementation of relevant UN resolutions. This must lead to the establishment of independent and sovereign state of Palestine based on 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. We recognize the essential role of the United Nations. We also welcome the contributions of regional and international partners, including the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, in advancing diplomacy and supporting humanitarian efforts. Tajikistan has, within its capacity, extended humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people and stands ready to continue supporting those in need. Excellencies, the international community shares a responsibility to protect civilians and to prevent further escalation. We must help create the condition for a credible political process. We urge all parties to exercise restraint and choose the path of peace. Tajikistan stands in solidarity with all those affected by the conflict. We remain committed to international efforts that promote peace, stability, and justice. Let us use this moment to reaffirm our commitment to dialogue, coexistence, and international law. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur
I
le
thank the
représentant du
representative of
Tadjikistan
Tajikistan
pour son intervention
for
et je
his
passe la parole
statement,
à
and I
Monsieur
give
le
the floor
représentant du
to the
Guatemala.
representative of Guatemala.
Señores copresidentes,
Co-chairs.
en nombre del Gobierno de Guatemala
On behalf
deseo
of the government
agradecer
of
a la
Guatemala, I'd
República
like to
Francesa
thank the
y al
Republic
Reino de
of
Arabia
France and the
Saudita
Kingdom
por
of
su
Saudi Arabia for
liderazgo
their
y
leadership
compromiso
and commitment
en la organización y convocatoria de esta
convening and
conferencia
organizing this
internacional.
international conference.
Oportunidad para emprender acciones
It's an
concretas
opportunity to
y tratar de
undertake
avanzar en una
concrete
resolución
steps and
justa y
try to
definitiva
make
al
progress
conflicto
towards
entre
a just
Israel
and
y
definitive resolution
Palestina.
of the conflict between Israel and Palestine.
Reconocemos también la valiosa labor de los
We also
copresidentes de
recognize the
los grupos de
valuable
trabajo de la
of the
conferencia,
co-chairs of the
cuyos esfuerzos
conference's working
diplomáticos
groups,
han
whose
permitido
diplomatic
estructurar
efforts
los
it
temas
possible to
importantes para
structure
avanzar
key
en
topics
propuestas que
to
conduzcan a resultados
advance on
tangibles.
proposals aimed at achieving tangible outcomes.
La República de Guatemala
The
reconoció
Republic of
oficialmente
Guatemala
a
officially
Palestina
recognized
el 8 de
Palestine
abril de
on the
2013
8th of
como un
April
Estado libre,
2013 as a
independiente
free,
y soberano.
independent and sovereign state.
Así también el 14 de mayo de
Likewise, on the
1948
14th of May
fuimos el primer
1948,
país de
we
América
were the
Latina
first country in
en
Latin
reconocer
America
la
to
fundación del
recognize the
Estado de
founding of the
Israel.
State of Israel.
Estas decisiones
These
no solo
decisions
reflejan nuestro compromiso
reflect not
histórico con
only
el
our historic
reconocimiento
commitment
internacional
to
de
the
Estados
international
soberanos,
recognition of sovereign
sino también
states,
con la
but
promoción de la paz
also
y la estabilidad
to
en el
promoting
Medio
peace
Oriente.
and stability in the Middle East.
Es por ello que Guatemala aboga por una solución de dos
Hence, Guatemala
estados,
advocates a
Israel y
two-state
Palestina,
solution,
que
Israel and
convivan uno al lado
Palestine,
del otro
living
dentro de
side by
fronteras
side
seguras y
within
reconocidas,
safe and
que
recognized
atienda
borders,
las legítimas preocupaciones de
addressing
seguridad de Israel
Israel's legitimate
y permita
security
la
concerns and
consolidación de un
enabling
Estado
the
palestino
establishment
que
of a
sea
Palestinian
política
state
y
that is politically and
económicamente
economically
viable.
viable.
Señores copresidentes, indudablemente
Co-chairs,
los abominables actos
undoubtedly the
terroristas
abhorrent
perpetrados por
terrorist acts
Hamas el
perpetrated
7 de
by
octubre
Hamas
de
on the 7th of October
2023
2023
y la respuesta del
and the
Estado de
response by the
Israel que
State
ha
of
afectado
Israel,
mayormente a la
which has
población
primarily
civil
affected the
que
civilian
habita en la franja
population
de
residing in
Gaza
the Gaza
y
Strip
en Cisjordania,
and in the West Bank,
contravienen el respeto a la Carta de las
contravene the
Naciones
principles of
Unidas,
the United
al
Nations
derecho
Charter,
internacional y al derecho internacional
international law,
humanitario.
and international humanitarian law.
Junto a lo anterior, también nos alarman las
In addition, we
repercusiones
are
de este
alarmed by the
conflicto en el
repercussions of
resto
this
de la
conflict
región.
across the
Hemos
rest of the
observado
region.
eventos que son de
We
profunda
have
preocupación en
seen
el Líbano,
deeply
Siria
concerning
y
developments
Yemen.
in Lebanon, Syria,
Es por
and
ello que
Yemen.
Guatemala se une a otros
Guatemala
países
therefore
para
joins
pedir un alto
other
al fuego inmediato,
countries in calling for
a
an
fin de que
immediate
las
ceasefire
actividades
to
humanitarias
enable
puedan llevarse a
humanitarian
cabo sin
activities
trabas en
to
un entorno
proceed
propicio
unhindered in
y la liberación de
a
los rehenes.
favorable environment,
Y
and we
espera
call for the release of
sinceramente que eso
hostages. We
conduzca a
sincerely
un
hope
alto al
that this
fuego
will lead to a
sostenible.
sustainable
Reiteramos nuestro
ceasefire.
profundo
We
compromiso con el
reaffirm
respeto
our
al derecho
profound
internacional
commitment to
humanitario y a los
respecting
principios
international
consagrados en
humanitarian
las
law and the
convenciones de
principles
Ginebra.
enshrined in the Geneva
Guatemala
Conventions.
condena todos los
Guatemala
actos de
condemns all
violencia
acts of
que
violence
afecten
that
principalmente a la
primarily
población civil.
affect the civilian population.
Asimismo, expresamos nuestra
We also
profunda
express
preocupación por la
our
grave crisis
deep-rooted
humanitaria que se
concern
vive
at the
actualmente en la
severe
franja de Gaza.
humanitarian crisis currently
Más de 1
unfolding in
millón
the
de
Gaza
personas
Strip.
han sido
More than 1
desplazadas
million people
y la
have been
destrucción de
displaced, and the
infraestructura civil
destruction of
crítica ha
critical
dejado a la
civilian
población sin
infrastructure has left
acceso
the
a
population
servicios
without access
esenciales
to
como
essential
agua potable,
services such as
atención
drinking
médica
water,
y
medical
electricidad.
care, and
El
electricity.
sufrimiento de la población
The
civil es
suffering of the
inaceptable y
civilian
requiere la
population is
atención urgente.
unacceptable and requires
Las
urgent
consecuencias
attention.
son especialmente
The
devastadoras para las
consequences are
mujeres,
particularly
ancianos
devastating
y
for
niños
women, the
desplazados
elderly,
por el
and children
conflicto,
displaced by the
quienes
conflict,
enfrentan traumas
who are
profundos,
facing
violencia,
profound trauma,
pérdida de
violence,
protección y
loss
hambruna.
of protection, and
Frente a
hunger.
esta tragedia
In the
humana,
face of this human
hacemos un llamado
tragedy,
firme a todas las
we
partes
firmly appeal
involucradas
to
para que
all
respeten
parties involved
plenamente
to
el
fully
derecho
respect
internacional
international
humanitario
humanitarian
y
law
garanticen la
and
protección
to
de estos grupos
ensure
vulnerables,
the protection of
la
these vulnerable
infraestructura
groups,
civil crítica
of critical
y el
civilian
acceso sin
infrastructure,
restricciones a la
and
asistencia
unrestricted
humanitaria.
access to humanitarian
Señores
assistance.
copresidentes, creemos en la
Co-chairs,
necesidad
we
urgente de
believe in
avanzar
the
hacia una
urgent
paz
need to move
sostenible que
towards a
ponga fin a
sustainable peace,
décadas de
bringing an
guerra y
end to
sufrimiento.
decades of war and
Respaldamos
suffering.
decididamente la
We
solución de dos
decisively
estados
support the
como la
two-state
única vía
solution as
justa,
the
sostenible y
only
viable
just,
para la paz.
sustainable, and viable path to
Como
peace.
nación comprometida
As a
con la
nation
paz y la
committed to
seguridad,
peace and security,
Guatemala continuará
Guatemala will
acompañando a la
continue
comunidad
to support the
internacional en la
international
promoción de una
community in
solución
promoting
política
a
negociada, no
negotiated,
militar, al conflicto.
non-military political solution to the
Alentamos a todas las
conflict.
partes
We encourage
involucradas,
all parties
así como a la
involved, as
comunidad
well as the international
internacional, a seguir
community, to
trabajando para
continue
terminar esta
working
guerra.
to bring an end to
Esto
this
solo
war.
es posible a
This
través
will
de la
only be
vía
possible
diplomática
through
y el diálogo.
diplomacy and
Muchas
dialogue.
gracias.
Thank you very much.
Je remercie Monsieur le
I
représentant du
thank the
Guatemala pour
representative
son
of Guatemala
intervention.
for his statement,
Je donne la parole à
and I now
Monsieur
give
le
the floor
représentant de la République islamique d'Iran.
to the representative of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, distinguished co-chairs, excellencies, for nearly 80 years, significant concessions have been granted to the occupying regime in the Palestinian territories. The policy of appeasement has proven ineffective in achieving peace, instead legitimizing criticizing and reinforcing the Israeli regime expansionist policies. The Gaza Strip has been reduced to rubble, and tens of thousands of inhabitants have been brutally slaughtered. Meanwhile, the regime intends to annex the West Bank to previously occupied Palestinian territory. Besides, the so-called Abraham Accord proved to be of no added value for the peaceful settlement of the Palestinian question. Rather, It merely emboldened the regime to reinforce and continue its destabilizing policies in Palestine and beyond. The regime brutality in violation of international law and the UN Charter further extended to the territory of sovereignty of the Islamic Republic of Iran. From 13 to 25 June, the Iranian vital infrastructure, scientists, civilian, including women and children, and civilian objects, as well as the IAEA safeguard nuclear facilities were targeted by unprovoked attacks by the Israeli regime, abated with the US direct engagement. Distinguished colleagues, the Charter described the principles of self-determination and imposed upon the United Nations the duty to respect the right of each nation to choose freely to be master of its destiny. With such conviction, the Islamic Republic of Iran reaffirms its principal position that the lasting peace and security in the region can only be achieved through the establishment of an independent sovereign state of Palestine, rooted in the genuine will of the original inhabitant regardless of their religion, as would be expressed in a free and inclusive referendum. The Islamic Republic of Iran firmly believes that any genuine initiative to realize the inalienable right of the Palestinian people must include the following core principles. 1. A just and lasting peace in Palestine can only be achieved through the full realization of the Palestinian people's inherent right to continued resistance and self-determination and to complete the end of occupation, apartheid, and all forms of colonial domination. Second, the Palestinian admission as a full member of the United Nations must be prioritized. The Security Council, under Article 4 of the UN Charter, is duty-bound to recommend Palestine membership. This process must not be obstructed by the United States. 3. The occupying regime must be held fully accountable for its systematic and widespread violation of international humanitarian and human rights law, including war crimes, genocide, ethnic cleansing, and its prolonged illegal occupation and apartheid policies. No form of immunity and impunity should shield such egregious violations. In light of its continued defiance of the UN Charter, the Israeli regime must face targeted sanction and suspension of its UN membership to protect the integrity and credibility of the organization. Any attempt to normalize relations with the Israeli occupying regime, as long as it persists in its illegal occupation and atrocity crimes, is a betrayal of international law and justice. Such actions undermine regional and international peace and security, confer unwarranted legitimacy on the criminal practices of the Israeli regime, and further embolden it to perpetrate grave violation of international law with impunity. We call for a sustainable solution and warn that any solution that is rooted in apartheid, injustice, and inequality will not be a sustainable one. Thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant de la République islamique
I
d'Iran
thank the
pour son
representative of the
intervention et je donne
Islamic
la
Republic
parole à
of
Monsieur
Iran
le
for his
représentant de
statement,
la
and I give the
République
floor to the
dominicaine.
representative of the Dominican Republic.
Señores presidentes de la conferencia, República
Chairs of the
Dominicana agradece en
conference,
primer lugar
the Dominican
a los
Republic would like to
copresidentes
begin by
Francia
expressing its
y Arabia
thanks to the
Saudita
co-chairs,
por el
France
trabajo
and Saudi
realizado
Arabia,
en los
for the
últimos
work that
meses
they've done
para
over the last
hacer
few months
posible este
to
encuentro.
make this meeting possible.
Reconocemos igualmente la ardua
We
labor
also
emprendida
acknowledge
por
the
todos los
hard work
países
undertaken
integrantes
by all of the
de los 8
countries
grupos de trabajo
participating in the
que han
8
presentado
working
sus
groups
conclusiones esta
which have
semana.
presented their
Ha sido un
conclusions this
trabajo
week.
oportuno y
This
muy
was
necesario.
timely and much
No
needed
podemos
work.
permanecer
We cannot
indiferentes
stand
ante la
indifferent
actual
to
situación
the
de
current
crisis en la región.
crisis in the region.
Como país comprometido
As a
con los
country
principios del
committed to the
derecho
principles of
internacional
international
y el
law
derecho
and
internacional
international
humanitario,
humanitarian
República
law,
Dominicana
the Dominican
expresa su
Republic
profunda
expresses its
preocupación por la
deep
grave situación
concern
humanitaria
over
que
the
atraviesa la
humanitarian
población civil
situation
en la
afflicting
región.
the civilian population in the
Hacemos un
region.
llamado urgente a todas
We
las partes
urgently
para
call
que
on all
garanticen el
parties
acceso
to
seguro,
ensure safe,
rápido y
swift,
sin obstáculos
and
de la
unobstructed
asistencia
access to
humanitaria a
humanitarian
todos los que las
assistance for
necesitan,
all those
en
in need,
cumplimiento de las obligaciones
in
establecidas
accordance with the
en
obligations
las
established
convenciones de
under
Ginebra
the Geneva
y sus protocolos
Conventions and their
adicionales.
additional protocols.
Nuestro país se encuentra presto a
Our
continuar
country stands
apoyando
ready to
todos los
continue
esfuerzos
supporting all
diplomáticos de la
diplomatic
comunidad
efforts made by the
internacional
international community
orientados a facilitar
to
el diálogo,
facilitate dialogue,
reducir las
ease
tensiones y
tensions,
promover
and
un orden
to
internacional
promote an
basado
international
en el
order
respeto a
based
las
on
normas,
respect for
donde la dignidad
the rule of
humana,
law,
la
where human
justicia
dignity,
y el
justice,
derecho
and
inclusivo
inclusive
sean los
development
principios
are the
rectores.
guiding principles.
República Dominicana desea en este
In
contexto
this context, the
reiterar su
Dominican
firme
Republic
apoyo
wishes to
a la
reiterate
existencia
its
de un Estado
steadfast support
palestino.
for the existence of a Palestinian
Confiamos en que
state.
los resultados
We
de
trust
esta
that the
conferencia
outcomes of this
y en
conference,
particular a
particularly
partir de los aportes
on the
presentados
basis of the
por los diferentes
contributions
grupos de
presented
trabajo,
by the various
serán
working
una
groups,
contribución
will
importante
make an
en
important
este propósito
contribution to this
conjunto a
shared
favor de la
objective
paz,
in
que
favor
será
of
lograda
peace.
en la
We hope
implementación,
that this
con la
will be achieved
implementación
through the
plena de
full
una solución
implementation of a
biestatal
two-state solution
y con el ingreso del Estado
and
Palestina,
through the admission
Estado
of
de
the State of
Palestina como miembro
Palestine as
pleno
a
de
full
esta
member of this
organización.
organization.
Muchas gracias,
Thank
señores
you very much.
presidentes.
Je remercie Monsieur le
I thank the
représentant de la
representative
République
of the
dominicaine
Dominican
pour son
Republic
intervention
for
et je
that
donne la
statement,
parole
and I now give the
à
floor
Monsieur le
to the
représentant du
representative of Cambodia.
Mr. President, Excellency, distinguished delegates, at the outset, allow me to express my appreciation to the government of France and Saudi Arabia for convening this vital high-level conference. It is my honor to speak today on behalf of a nation that not long ago emerged from the shadow of conflict, devastation, and grief. Cambodia, now all too well the human cause of war and the destructive power of hatred. This experience compels us to approach today's deliberations with a profound commitment to peace. As a small and peace-loving state, Cambodia cannot overstate the values of peace. Yet today, our peace has been gravely disrupted. The situation along our border remains fragile, following a series of hostile acts by our neighbors. Mr. President, Cambodia reaffirmed its unwavering support for a two-state solution as the only viable path to a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace between Israel and Palestine. The vision rooted in relevant United Nations resolution and international law envision two sovereign states coexistent side by side in harmony within secure and recognized border. In this regard, Cambodia further endorsed Palestinian aspiration for full membership of the United Nations. Cambodia called for utmost genuine effort to resolve the protracted Israeli-Palestinian conflict through diplomacy, peaceful resolution, starting with a permanent ceasefire agreement, which is urgently needed to protect life and provide relief to the suffering. We express deep concern about the persistent violence and humanitarian suffering in the region, which must not be allowed to continue unchecked. Civilian safety must be non-negotiable. We strongly condemn all acts of terrorism and violence targeting civilians. Such action only deep division and perpetuate cycle of vengeance. The horror of war cannot be resolved through further conflict. Cambodia urges all parties to engage in meaningful dialogue guided by international law and humanitarian principles. Cambodia calls upon the international community to renew its commitment and solidarity to multilateralism, strengthen the roles of the United Nations, and advocate for constructive engagement between all stakeholders to support negotiations that lead to a just, lasting, and peaceful resolution. In conclusion, Cambodia wishes to underscore the importance of upholding the principle of mutual respect and tolerance as fundamental pillar of peaceful coexistence, stability, and progress throughout the region. Let us move beyond finger pointing and unite in our shared humanity. Let peace not be a distant dream, but a shared and achievable reality. I thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant
I
du
thank the
Cambodge pour son
representative of
intervention
Cambodia for that
et je donne
statement,
la parole
and I
à
give the
Monsieur le
floor
représentant du
to
Saint-Siège.
the representative of the Holy See.
Mr. Co-Chairs, at the outset, my delegation wishes to express its appreciation to France and Saudi Arabia for convening this conference and to thank the co-chairs of the working groups for their dedicated efforts. In an era where strength is frequently regarded as a prerequisite for peace, this gathering should serve as a poignant reminder that only through patient and inclusive dialogue a just and lasting conflict resolution can be achieved. Mr. Co-Chairs, in the light of the profound anguish and terrible human suffering that has befallen the region, the Holy See reiterates its unequivocal condemnation of the heinous terrorist attack of 7 October by Hamas against the people of Israel. Terrorism can never be justified. At the same time, the Holy See emphasizes that the right to self-defense should be exercised within the traditional limit of necessity and proportionality. The Holy See remains gravely concerned by the worsening humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. The devastating impact on civilians, especially the number of children killed, has been compounded by the destructions of homes, hospitals, and places of worship, with the recent attack on the Holy Family Church further wounding an already distressed community. This is deeply concerning given that Christians in the region have long played a vital role as a moderating and stabilizing presence, promoting dialogue and peace. The mass displacement of families, the breakdown of essential services, growing famine, and widespread deprivation shock the human conscience and require an immediate coordinated response from the international community. Therefore, the Holy See urgently calls for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all Israeli hostages, the restitutions of the bodies of the deceased, the protection of all Palestinian civilians in accordance with international humanitarian law, and unhindered access to humanitarian assistance. Mr. Co-Chairs, the Holy See remains convinced that the two-state solution based on a secure and internationally recognized borders is the only viable and equitable path towards a just and lasting peace. To support this vision, the Holy See has already taken meaningful steps. It formally recognized the State of Israel through the 1993 Fundamental Agreement and the State of Palestine through the 2015 Comprehensive Agreement. It continues to uphold the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination. The Holy See supports their legitimate aspiration to live in freedom, security, and dignity within an independent and sovereign state. Mr. Co-Chairs, Jerusalem is a city of universal religion and cultural significance. It is sacred to Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. Therefore, it requires a status that transcends political divisions and ensures the preservation of its unique identity. To this end, the Holy See reiterates its long-standing call for an international guaranteed special status capable of ensuring the dignity and rights of all its inhabitants and the faithful of the three monotheistic religions, the equality before the law of their institutions and communities, safeguarding the city's sacred character and exceptional religious and cultural heritage. Furthermore, it must ensure the protection of the holy places, guarantee the unhindered right to access them and to worship there. It must also preserve the status quo where applicable. In Jerusalem, no one should be subjected to harassment. Therefore, it is regrettable that Christians feel increasingly threatened in the old city of Jerusalem. Mr. Co-Chairs, my delegation sincerely hopes that this conference will help build trust and strengthen the commitment of all parties to pursuing peace. Thank you very much.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant du Saint-Siège pour son
thank the
intervention et
representative of the
je donne
Holy
la
See
parole
for
à
the
Monsieur le
statement,
représentant de
and I
la
give the
Namibie.
floor to the representative of Namibia.
Merci beaucoup et shukran to the co-chairs for giving Namibia the floor to address this assembly. Namibia reaffirms its long-standing and principled position on the question of Palestine. The rights of the Palestinian people are not a matter of negotiation or compromise. They are rights guaranteed under international law, affirmed by countless United Nations resolutions and recognized by the international community. Yet, we continue to witness with grave concern the unfolding deadly and destructive violence and loss of human life that undermine efforts towards a peaceful resolution of the long-standing conflict. Israel's indiscriminate attacks against civilians in Gaza are the latest episode in the 77 years of the Nakba. The escalating violence is amongst the deadliest on record for women, children, the elderly, and people with disabilities. Namibia remains particularly worried about the worsening humanitarian situation. Throughout Gaza, freedom of movement and access to humanitarian relief remain severely limited despite the clear provisions of Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. Let us be reminded that the weaponization of starvation as a method of warfare is prohibited under international law and must be halted. We firmly believe that the path to peace must begin with an immediate and unconditional ceasefire by all parties and the full implementation of all UN resolutions. This is an imperative that will pave the way for just, lasting, and comprehensive peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, living side by side, coexisting in an atmosphere of peace and security. No amount of humanitarian and economic support can substitute a negotiated two-state solution, which is the only solution to meet the legitimate security needs of both Israelis and Palestinians. This also implies the urgency of ensuring accountability by all parties. Moreover, there is an urgency to solving the ongoing fiscal crisis faced by the Palestinian Authority due to a combination of factors, including a foreign aid shortfall and the impact of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The World Bank has reported that the conflict has plunged the Palestinian economy into its deepest contraction in over a generation, with Gaza experiencing near total paralysis and the West Bank facing a deep recession. The continuation of this crisis is impacting an already fragile Palestinian economy and threatens to destabilize an already volatile situation. The situation is exacerbated by the Israeli government's withholding of funds and restrictions on humanitarian aid delivery, and we urge the international community to provide coordinated support to address this crisis. My delegation resolutely supports the admission of the State of Palestine as a full member state of the United Nations with all rights and privileges. The recent Security Council veto that blocked Palestine's full UN membership is a significant setback for international efforts to resolve the protracted Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Palestine has held observer status at the UN since 2012 and has diligently worked towards full membership, which is a vital step toward recognizing Palestinian statehood. Currently, Palestine is acknowledged as a sovereign nation by 149 of the 193 member states, demonstrating overwhelming international support for its rightful recognition. We call on the UN Security Council to reconsider its stance and to take a just decision that reflects the rights and aspirations of Palestinians. In conclusion, Namibia's commitment and solidarity with the Palestinian people is unwavering. We believe in their inalienable right to self-determination and full recognition as a rightful member of the United Nations and its specialized agencies, ensuring they secure their long overdue place within the global community of nations. Namibia remains dedicated to supporting all diplomatic efforts aimed at achieving these vital goals, advocating for justice, peace, and equality.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant
I
de la
thank the
Namibie pour son
representative of Namibia
intervention.
for that
Et
statement,
je passe la parole à
and I
Monsieur le
give the floor
représentant de la
to the
Thaïlande.
representative of Thailand.
Co-chairs, Thailand would like to express our deep appreciation for your collective efforts and determination in convening this conference to reaffirm our shared political will and commitment to ensuring peace and stability in the Middle East. This long-awaited conference aims to advance international support for a just, lasting, and comprehensive resolution of the Israel-Palestine conflict through the peaceful implementation of the two-state solution. Co-chairs, regrettably, one delegation raised an unrelated issue. While I had not intended to bring this bilateral matter into this very important forum, I must briefly clarify the facts to prevent misunderstanding. On July 28, through the good offices of the Prime Minister of Malaysia's Chair Fasian, a ceasefire was agreed. Yet, shortly after it took effect on July 29th, our neighbor resumed cross-border fire and incursions into Thailand territory in grave violation of the agreement. Thailand urges our neighbor to adhere strictly to the ceasefire agreement and reaffirms its commitment to working through existing bilateral channels and to refrain from disseminating false or misleading information and to engage in good faith. Co-chairs, the dire situation in Gaza with ongoing hostilities, humanitarian suffering, and widespread displacements, as well as rising tensions across the broader Middle East region, urgently call for renewed dialogue and efforts to safeguard peace and stability. Allow me to highlight the following points. First, Thailand reaffirms our support for the two-state solution as the only viable path to lasting peace in accordance with international law and relevant UN resolutions, with the states of Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. An inclusive approach is essential. Thailand supports all efforts by the UN regional and international partners, including the League of Arab States, the OIC, and peace-loving nations, to foster meaningful dialogue and create conditions for peace. Trust must be rebuilt through confidence-building measures, constructive engagement, and inclusive diplomacy that addresses the concerns and aspirations of all parties. Second, we'll continue to call for a ceasefire that is sustainable, and an immediate and unconditional release of all remaining hostages. With Thai nationals among those affected, we have witnessed firsthand the human toll that extends beyond the region. Peace in the Middle East is therefore a shared responsibility for us all. Third, the protection of civilians remains our priority. We support the immediate, safe, unimpeded delivery of humanitarian assistance in accordance with international humanitarian law. Co-chairs, today, let us reaffirm our collective resolve to bring this conflict to a permanent end through constructive dialogue and action-oriented solutions. Let history not remember us for our inaction, but for our courage to take decisive steps in the pursuit of peace over conflict.
I thank the representative of Thailand for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Agradezco a Arabia Saudita y a Francia por la convocatoria a esta conferencia de alto nivel. El 29 de noviembre de 1947, el Ecuador votó a favor de la resolución 181 de esta Asamblea General. Señores copresidentes, para el Ecuador, el multilateralismo debe contribuir con urgencia a responder de modo contundente a las necesidades de los pueblos, Así, por ejemplo, el Ecuador sostiene que el concepto de paz y seguridad se debe aplicar para hacer frente de manera oportuna, eficaz, coherente a las nuevas amenazas a la democracia y a los derechos humanos, incluyendo al terrorismo y a la delincuencia organizada transnacional. Se trata de flagelos mundiales que no conocen fronteras, frente a los cuales ningún país puede actuar en solitario. Esa lógica realista y de multilateralismo efectivo debe también aplicarse a la cuestión que hoy nos convoca. Ni acciones militares, ni secuestros, ni conquistas, ni levantamientos, ni hambrunas, ni abominables actos terroristas han logrado o lograrán resolver esta cuestión. Casi 8 décadas de intentar ese camino sin éxito debería ser suficiente. Es tiempo de detener la lógica de buscar culpables y enfocarnos en lograr una avenencia definitiva. El único camino es avanzar hacia la solución negociada, pacífica, definitiva y justa para las partes. Mi país hace votos para que en un día no muy lejano retornen la paz y la seguridad a la región. Muchas gracias.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kyrgyzstan.
Distinguished co-chairs, excellencies, Let me also thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and France for convening this important conference. We also commend the contributions and ongoing engagement of all high-level representatives presented over the past 3 days. Kyrgyzstan stands in full solidarity with the people of Palestine, particularly in light of the devastating humanitarian situation in Gaza. We're gravely concerned by the suffering endured by innocent civilians, especially women, children, and elderly. The ceasefire agreement from January 2025 brought a brief yet significant pause in hostage, enabled the exchange of prisoners and hostages, and allowed the critical humanitarian assistance delivered by the UN, ICRC, and other partners to those who is on urgent need. Regrettably, this fragile ceasefire was short-lived. Hostilities have resumed, and once again, it is the civilian population that bears to the greatest burden. However, the situation is not hopeless. Let's collectively reaffirm our unwavering commitment to peace, dialogue, and the protection of human life. We call all parties to exercise maximum restraint and to uphold their responsibilities under international humanitarian law. Excellencies, 149 UN member states have recognized the state of Palestine. Kyrgyzstan is proud to be among them. We established diplomatic relations with Palestine back in 1995, and this year we will celebrate the 30th anniversary of our diplomatic ties. We welcome the decision made by France on the recognition of the State of Palestine and the decision of the United Kingdom, which was announced yesterday at this very stage. We believe that a just, lasting, and comprehensive solution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict must be based on the relevant UN resolutions and the long-standing principle of two states for two people, living side by side in peace, security, and mutual recognition. Ladies and gentlemen, the global community must remain united in its efforts to end the bloodshed, to prevent the further loss of innocent lives, prevent further escalation of the full-scale humanitarian catastrophe. We welcome initiative to establish the international coalition to advance the implementation of two-state solution. Kyrgyzstan is ready and will contribute to all international efforts aimed at achieving a just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in the Middle East. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kyrgyzstan for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kazakhstan.
Distinguished co-chairs, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Kazakhstan commends and sincerely thanks the Republic of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for their leadership in reviving international momentum for a just, lasting, and peaceful resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Kazakhstan has consistently supported the realization of this two-state solution as the only viable path to a just, comprehensive, and lasting peace in the Middle East. We firmly believe that the establishment of an independent, sovereign, and viable state of Palestine within the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, living side by side with Israel in peace and security, remains essential to regional and global stability. This vision is founded especially on the relevant UN General Assembly and Security Council resolutions. At the same time, Kazakhstan unequivocally condemns the terrorist attacks carried out on the 7th of October 2023, which led to the killing of civilians and the taking of hostages. We call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. Such acts are unacceptable and have no justification under international law. The protection of civilians must be upheld on all sides. We are deeply alarmed by continuing escalation of violence, the unprecedented level of human suffering in Gaza, and the absence of a genuine political horizon. The dire humanitarian situation is unacceptable and demands urgent international attention. Kazakhstan reaffirms its support for the central role of the United Nations in efforts to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Hence, we highly commend and support the work of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian refugees in the Near East in providing vital services and protection to millions of Palestinian refugees. It has been for 7 decades a crucial lifeline for them despite unprecedented operational challenges and funding shortfalls. Kazakhstan has been contributing voluntary financial support to UNRWA core and emergency programs and stands ready to continue this assistance. We call for sustained and predictable funding for it and safeguard its neutrality, operational integrity, and viability. Furthermore, we express our solidarity with the people of Palestine and reaffirm our readiness to extend humanitarian and development assistance, including to the civilian population in Gaza. We also believe that ensuring accountability and adherence to international humanitarian and human rights law must be at the heart of any meaningful process toward peace. The protection of civilians must remain paramount. There can be no lasting peace without justice, dignity, and mutual recognition. Peace cannot be deferred indefinitely. Kazakhstan welcomes efforts aimed at rebuilding confidence and revitalizing dialogue between the parties as well as within the international community, including through regional and multilateral platforms. We are also open to participate in broader efforts to create enabling conditions for the resumption of meaningful peace negotiations under the auspices of the UN and in line with the internationally agreed parameters. To conclude, the international community has a moral and political responsibility to act. Let us stand for a just and secure Middle East while restoring the faith of generations who deserve to grow up free from fear with rights and opportunities. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Messieurs les
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
co-présidents, ma délégation salue la
Co-chairs,
tenue
my
de cette
delegation
importante
welcomes
conférence
the convening of this
internationale
important
qui nous offre
international
l'opportunité
conference,
d'œuvrer
which
de concert
offers up an
pour le
opportunity
règlement
to work
pacifique de la
together
question de
towards
Palestine et pour la
the
mise en
peaceful
œuvre
settlement of the
de
question
la
of
solution
Palestine
à deux États.
and the
Mon pays
implementation of the
réitère ses
two-state
chaleureuses
solution.
félicitations
My
à la
country would like
France
to
et
reiterate
à
its
l'Arabie
heartfelt
saoudite
congratulations
pour
to
leur
France
leadership en qualité
and
de
Saudi
co-président de
Arabia.
la
Thank you for your
conférence
leadership
et
as
les assure
co-chairs
de
of
son
the
plein
conference.
soutien.
Rest
La Côte
assured you
d'Ivoire
have our
tient
full
enfin
support.
à saisir cette auguste
Côte
tribune
d'Ivoire would like
pour
to,
renouveler son
speaking from
appui aux
this high
initiatives du
rostrum,
secrétaire général des
reiterate its
Nations
support
Unies, son Excellence
for
M.
the
Antonio Guterres,
initiatives of the
en
UN
vue de la
Secretary
paix au
General,
Moyen-Orient.
His Excellency
Elle
Antonio
l'exhorte à
Guterres,
poursuivre ses efforts
efforts for
inlassables
peace in the Middle East.
pour la
We
résolution
urge the
définitive
continuation
de la
of
crise
his tireless
entre
efforts
Israël
to
et la
ensure the
Palestine.
definitive
Messieurs les
resolution of the
co-présidents,
crisis between
la
Israel and
présente
Palestine.
rencontre se tient dans un
Co-chairs,
contexte international
this meeting
fortement
is being
marqué par
held in
l'exacerbation
an
de la
international
crise
context strongly
israélo-palestinienne,
characterized by the
avec son lot
exacerbation of
quotidien
the
d'atrocités,
Israeli-Palestinian
de pertes en
crisis,
vies humaines,
with
de destruction
deadly
des
atrocities, loss of
infrastructures et
human
de
life,
déplacements massifs de
infrastructure
civils
destruction,
et d'otages
massive civilian
encore
displacement,
détenus. Selon
as
les
well as
données
hostages
tirées du
still being
rapport
detained.
et du dernier
According
rapport
to
de l'Office de
data
coordination des affaires
from the last
humanitaires des
report
Nations
published
Unies,
by the Office of the
à ce
Coordination
jour, le
of
nombre de morts
Humanitarian
et de blessés
Affairs,
liés à
OCHA,
l'attaque du Hamas
to
contre
date,
Israël et aux
the number
contre-attaques
of
d'Israël
people
dans la
dead
bande
and
de
injured
Gaza
due
et en
to Hamas's attack
Cisjordanie
on Israel
depuis le
and
7
Israel's
octobre
counterattacks in the
2023
Gaza Strip
s'élève à
and the
plus de
West Bank
58 000
since
morts
the 7th
et
October
plus de
2023
139 000
stands
blessés.
at
Face à cette situation d'une ampleur
58,000 dead
inédite,
and over
faisant actuellement
139,000
craindre un
injured.
effondrement humanitaire à
Faced
Gaza,
with this
mon pays, la Côte
situation,
d'Ivoire,
its
alarmé par
unprecedented
cette tragédie,
proportions
voudrait
in
appeler
which
encore
we
une fois
fear
à la
humanitarian collapse in
retenue et à
Gaza, Côte
recourir à la
d'Ivoire,
diplomatie
alarmed by this
pour un
tragedy,
règlement
would like to once
pacifique
again call
et
for
durable
restraint and for
de la
recourse to
crise.
diplomacy for a
Délégation
peaceful
salue à cet
and
égard
lasting settlement
l'adoption
of
le
the
12
crisis.
juin
My
2025
delegation
par
welcomes
l'Assemblée
the
générale des
adoption on the
Nations
12th of
Unies
June
d'une
of this year
résolution
by the General
exigeant un
Assembly
cessez-le-feu
of
à
a
Gaza
resolution
et la
demanding
garantie
a
que l'aide
ceasefire in
parvienne
Gaza and
immédiatement et en
guarantees
quantité
that
suffisante
sufficient
à la
aid
population civile
immediately
palestinienne. Elle
reaches
demeure convaincue que sa
Palestinian
mise en
civilians.
œuvre effective
We remain convinced
permettra
that
de
it is
préserver des
only
vies,
its effective
la dignité
implementation that
humaine
will allow
et
to save
favorisera
lives,
la
human
paix.
dignity,
Par
and
ailleurs, à
foster
l'instar de nombreuses
peace.
délégations,
Furthermore, much
la
like
Côte d'Ivoire
many other
déplore l'absence de
delegations, we
consensus au sein
deplore
du
the lack of
Conseil de
consensus
sécurité
within
sur
the
cette
Security
question.
Council on
Elle
this issue.
l'invite à surmonter ces
We
divergences,
invite the
notamment
Council to put
dans les
aside its
situations
differences,
d'urgence
especially
humanitaire. Messieurs les
in
co-présidents, certes,
humanitarian emergency
la guerre
situations.
à Gaza
Co-chairs, indeed, the war in Gaza, which was started on the 7th of October 2023, dealt another blow to the idea of a negotiated solution, solidifying positions and taking us ever further away from the prospects of a return to peace in the region. Nonetheless, we believe that this meeting gives us an excellent opportunity to reiterate our common commitment and attachment to a peaceful settlement of the conflict between Israel and Palestine. We deplore the fact that the settlement efforts have been stalling for decades. Indeed, these deliberations are an opportunity to revive international support for peace. My country stands convinced that it is through respect for international law and relevant Security Council and General Assembly resolutions that a lasting and mutually acceptable solution to the conflict can be found. On this note, we reiterate our commitment to the two-state solution, two states coexisting in peace within 1967 borders. This unswerving position, the position of Cote d'Ivoire, has for decades been advocated for by Félix Houphouët-Boigny, our first president. It was then reiterated by his successors, in particular His Excellency Mr. Alassane Ouattara, President of the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire. This is the thrust behind our support for relevant UN Security Council, UN resolutions calling for a ceasefire, the delivery of humanitarian aid, and the implementation of a two-state solution. Co-chairs, to conclude, I'd like to ardently reiterate that we wish this conference every success. We hope that it will allow for progress on the implementation of UN resolutions on the question of Palestine and the two-state solution, so as to achieve comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East. I thank you for your kind attention.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant de la Côte d'Ivoire
the representative of Côte d'Ivoire for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Romania.
Esteemed co-chairs, Your Excellencies, Romania welcomes the convening of the international conference in a key moment for the future of the Middle East and our collective security. We wholeheartedly hope that this timely initiative will be a decisive step in reviving the two-state solution and setting it on an irreversible course. We would also like to congratulate the conveners of the conference, the two co-chairs of the event, France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as the co-chairs of the 8 working groups for undertaking this responsibility and for all the hard work that went into the preparations. The events that have transpired since the heinous terrorist attack of October 7th, 2023, provide unquestionable evidence that we must keep working towards a political resolution, and our presence here today reflects this common understanding. Regretfully, a ceasefire has not been renewed as of yet. There are hostages still in captivity, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza remains extremely dire. We hope and continue to act in support of an agreement that might open up new opportunities for the whole region. Your Excellencies, from the outset, I would like to underline Romania's long-standing support of a negotiated settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict based on the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. We strongly believe that this is the only sustainable solution that meets both the legitimate aspiration for statehood of the Palestinian people and the necessary security guarantees for Israel, as well as a viable promise for enduring peace and stability in the Middle East. Romania recognized the state of Palestine back in 1988 and for many years continued to foster close ties with both sides, played its part in mediating the early Israeli-Palestinian peace talks, and reiterated their mutual right to live in peace, security, and prosperity. Excellencies, what happened on October 7, 2023 has no justification. We condemn the brutal attack of Hamas against the state of Israel and the Israeli people. Hamas's hostage policy is unacceptable and undermines the future of the two-state solution. Once more, we call for the immediate, unconditional, and dignified release of all hostages. On the other hand, the suffering and destruction in Gaza today reach an unprecedented level. We are witnessing the gravely degraded humanitarian situation in Gaza and the suffering of innocent, especially women and children. The security of Israel cannot and will not come at the cost of civilian lives in Gaza. This is why, along with our EU and regional partners, Romania supports a ceasefire, concrete steps to re-establish decent living conditions for the civilian population of Gaza, and a comprehensive peace agreement as the only path to ensure lasting security for both Israel and the Palestinian people. From the beginning, Romania prioritized the provision of humanitarian aid to the region, sent multiple shipments of humanitarian aid to Gaza, and facilitated the evacuation of pediatric patients from the street, along with their family members. We have carried out so far, together with the European Union, with the European Commission, 7 humanitarian flights for 76 children and 185 family members. 41 of them are currently being treated in Romanian hospitals, and we are committed to continue these efforts. But this is just a temporary and scarce fix for a very complex situation, which needs long-term measures in order to address the reconstruction of Gaza and to heal the physical and emotional scars of this drawn-out conflict. We must continue to assist the Palestinian Authority in preparing its future role, both in the West Bank and Gaza, its capacity building and its reform agenda. Romania remains strongly committed to the principles underlying humanitarian aid. Acknowledging an international community based on the respect of the international law, including international humanitarian law and solidarity, we back a collaborative long-term solution for a reform UNRWA, moving forward with the ongoing process of completely putting the Colonna recommendations into practice. We appreciate the efforts made by EU High Representative Kaja Kallas to reach an agreement with the Israeli authorities on humanitarian aid access. Its full implementation is needed. It can only be deemed successful if there is sufficient humanitarian aid delivered into Gaza. Thus, we also need EU monitoring on the ground and a fully active EU-BAM Rafah. Last but not least, I would like to extend our gratitude to the co-chairs of Working Group number 5, the United Kingdom and Egypt, for their important work. We are ready to work together with
I thank the representative of Romania for his statement, and now give the floor to the representative of Belize.
Co-chairs, excellencies, distinguished delegates. At the outset, Belize aligns itself with a statement delivered by the distinguished delegate of Barbados on behalf of the 14 member states of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. We commend the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the government of France for their leadership in co-chairing this conference aimed at advancing the peaceful and just settlement of the question of Palestine. We are especially encouraged by the announcements of several governments that they intend to recognize the state of Palestine in September. We hope that other member states, especially those that supported the 1948 UN resolution, follow suit and join the 147 countries that have already recognized Palestine. Belize's position on the question of Palestine has never wavered. We have been a consistent voice in support of the full realization of the Palestinian people's inalienable rights to self-determination, independence, and sovereignty. It is from this principled position that we view the current situation with deep concern and moral urgency. Excellencies, we are gathered here today to take long overdue steps toward the implementation of the 1948 UN resolution on the question of Palestine. While recognition of the state of Palestine is critical and a necessary step forward, it is only the beginning. The international community must go further and provide every assistance to the Palestinian people to establish and strengthen its institutions to govern and manage a modern, democratic state living side by side with the people of Israel within secure and recognized borders. At the same time, the international community must confront the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza head-on. Homes, schools, hospitals, and entire communities have been destroyed in a campaign of violence that has spared no one. Belize unequivocally condemns the indiscriminate bombing in Gaza, the blockade of life-saving humanitarian aid, and the ongoing violation of the UN Charter and international law. We must act to ensure the immediate, safe, and unimpeded flow of humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people under the coordination and oversight of the United Nations. We must also ensure Palestine receives the financial, material, and technical assistance needed to support their reconstruction efforts. Excellencies, for any of this to materialize, there must be a genuine political process. Israel must come to the table. It must understand that there can be no lasting peace in the region unless the question of Palestine is resolved. Trust must be restored in the region, but first the violence must end. Recrimination by the combatants, their sponsors, the onlookers must stop. The forceful and unlawful acquisition of Palestinian land and property by Israeli settlers in the West Bank must stop. We in the international community must contribute to building trust in the region by providing meaningful support to all the factions, not only Palestine and Israel, but also to their neighbors, so that a culture of peace, cooperation, and mutual respect prevails. Let this conference be the beginning process to create a world in which the children of Palestine and Israel can live without fear, one in which they can live in peace, realize their ambitions, and share the richness of their cultures. Belize stands firmly with the Palestinian people and remain committed to the pursuit of justice, peace, and the vision of two sovereign states living side by side in mutual respect and security. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant de
I
Belize
thank the
pour son
representative
intervention
of Belize
et
for
je
his
donne la
statement. I now
parole
give
à
the
Monsieur le
floor to the
représentant de la
representative
Bulgarie.
of Bulgaria.
Thank you very much, dear co-chairs. Bulgaria highly appreciates the holding of this important international conference, co-chaired by France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Achieving lasting peace and stability in the Middle East is our shared priority, one that can only be realized through joint and coordinated efforts. Back in 1988, Bulgaria was among the first countries to recognize the state of Palestine. This historic decision stands as a testament to our long-standing commitment to a just and comprehensive peace. Grounded on the two-state solution. Today, we gather not merely to exchange views on policy, but to reaffirm a fundamental principle, one that speaks to the dignity of peoples, the urgency of justice, and the moral responsibility of the international community. That principle is the right of both Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace, security, and self-determination side by side in two sovereign and viable states. The two-state solution is not a rhetorical ideal. It is a vision anchored in decades of international consensus, enshrined in United Nations resolutions, embodied in Oslo Accords, and held by millions who refuse to yield to despair. It remains the only viable path towards a durable peace, one that guarantees a secure and democratic Israel and a free, sovereign, and democratic Palestine. Bulgaria strongly condemns the brutal terrorist attack carried out by Hamas on 7th of October 2023, which resulted in the horrific loss of more than 1,200 innocent civilian lives. The tragic developments in the Middle East since 7th of October underscore the urgent need for peace. As is often the case, civilians bear the heaviest burden of the conflict. The immediate priority must be an enduring ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the dramatic improvement in the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza. This must include unimpeded access for humanitarian aid and its sustained distribution across the Strip, in line with UN Security Resolution 2735, as well as the protection of humanitarian workers on the ground. These goals require not only political, but will be also the design of implementation of practical and viable solutions. For peace to be sustainable, it must emerge from direct negotiations between the parties, who must be willing to compromise, demonstrate leadership, and take courageous steps forward. The fundamental prerequisite for lasting peace is trust, confidence-building measure aiming at reducing tensions, enhancing communication, and promoting dialogue must be prioritized prioritized during any potential peace process. In this context, the exchange of information on security-related matters and the exercise of restraint are critical. Israel has a proven record of such cooperation, including with Palestinian Authority. Any future regional security architecture must take into account Israel's legitimate security concerns and be rooted in the recognition of its right to exist, an imperative that should be universally accepted. Neighboring Arab states should be actively involved in this effort, ideally through normalization of relations following the model of the Abraham Accords. At the same time, the state of Palestine, represented by the Palestinian Authority, must be recognized by the international community, excluding any role for Hamas. This requires successful inter-Palestinian reconciliation, leading to the establishment of unified leadership elected through inclusive democratic elections. These elections would not only resolve questions of legitimacy, but would also lay the foundation for a functional and democratic Palestinian state. In this regard, capacity building remains essential. Particular attention must be given to working with the youth, creating pathways to peace and development, while countering radicalization and incitement to violence. Let history remember this moment, not as yet another missed opportunity, but as a beginning of a renewed international commitment. Let this conference not only express solidarity, but serve as a catalyst for action. For peace is not a gift we offer one another, it's a responsibility we owe to future generations. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant
I thank
de la
the
Bulgarie
representative
pour son
of Bulgaria
intervention et je donne
for
la
his
parole à
statement, and
Monsieur
I'll
le
give the
représentant
floor
de la Gambie.
to the representative of Gambia.
Co-chairs, excellencies, distinguished delegates. Let me seize this opportunity to convey our deep appreciation to the governments of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this international conference under the auspices of the General Assembly as regards the question of Palestine and the two-state solution in a bid to work towards the international processes for lasting peace, for lasting peaceful solution to the crisis in Gaza. The Gambia also welcomes the historic efforts by France for the recognition of Palestine as a state and encourages other member states to seize the momentum and to recognize Palestinian statehood. This conference is a call to collective and pragmatic action anchored on the hope of peace, justice, dignity, and respect for self-determination, sovereignty, and the statehood of the Palestinian people. Excellencies, today we stand at a critical juncture in the history of our world, facing a crisis that threatens to unravel decades of diplomatic efforts and plunge our world into deeper conflict. As we gathered here, the occupation of Palestine continues to be a source of immense pain and suffering. This comportment not only undermines the prospect for a peaceful resolution, but also exacerbate the tensions within the region. Chair, co-chairs, the ongoing occupation of Palestine and the injustice suffered by the Palestinian people serve as one of the most egregious situations to have ever occurred in our lifetime. It is incontrovertible that in view of the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, the need for definitively resolve the conflict has never been more urgent. The Gambia recognizes the enduring negative consequences of the occupation of Palestine and believes that the occupation and hostilities against the Palestinian people is not only a violation of our shared humanity, but also an affront to the rule-based international order. In this regard, the Gambia warmly welcomes the outcome of the various working groups established on the margins of this high-level conference. The situation of Palestine is about the core principle of justice and self-determination. We cannot continue to remain silent when clear violations of international human rights and international law are being committed in Gaza and West Bank. Co-chairs, the humanitarian catastrophe currently unfolding in Gaza is both profound and devastating. with far-reaching consequences, not only for the region, but for the international community as well. We support all genuine efforts to maximize the prospect of a peaceful resolution, including the efforts aimed at reducing the tension within the region. Gaza's future and that of its population must be guaranteed. The scale of the displacement has resulted in unprecedented strain on resources and infrastructure within Gaza and neighboring areas where refugees seek shelter. Essential services like healthcare, water, sanitation, and electricity are severely compromised, leading to severe shortages of necessities. The people of Gaza need our collective support to rebuild their lives. It is critical for the global community to come together to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches those in need and to work towards a sustainable political solution that promotes peace and security for all people in the region. Bearing in mind, also, the peace cannot be guaranteed without the exercise of right to self-determination of the Palestinian people and statehood. It is our conviction that we proceed with a clear focus on our shared goals, peace, justice, and restoration of dignity to all those affected by the conflict. It is through our united efforts that we can hope to achieve a durable ceasefire and the unconditional release of all hostages, thereby paving the way for a lasting peace and that respects the rights and sovereignty of all. The Gambia believes that the lasting peace on both sides embodies the strong collective resolve to also ensure the full membership of Palestine into the United Nations and earning its deserved position as part of the Committee of Nations with equal rights and many other member states of the United Nations. In this context, we reiterate and endorse the call for a peace day for a lasting solution to the Palestinian problem. In our view, the best option for a peaceful settlement of this dispute between
Je remercie Monsieur le
I
représentant
thank
de
the
la Gambie pour
representative
son
of the
intervention
Gambia
et
for
je donne
the
la
statement,
parole
and
à
I
Monsieur
give
le
the floor
représentant de
to
la
the
République
representative
unie
of
de
the United
Tanzanie.
Republic of Tanzania.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the United Republic of Tanzania is honored to participate in this important high-level conference on the question of Palestine and the pursuit of this two-state solution. We commend the initiatives and leadership of the co-chairs, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic, and welcome the continued commitment of the international community to advancing a just, lasting, and peaceful resolution to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Tanzania remains deeply concerned by the continued escalation of violence and the terrible humanitarian situation, particularly in the Gaza Strip. The situation reaffirms the urgent need for concrete steps towards implementing the two-state solution with Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and security within the secure internationally recognized borders based on the pre-1967 lines in accordance with international law and relevant United Nations resolutions, including General Assembly Resolution ES 10/24. Co-chairs, Tanzania reaffirmed its unwavering support for the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination, independence, and sovereignty. We reiterate our long-standing position that the only sustainable path to peace is through genuine negotiation based on mutual recognition, peaceful coexistence, and a shared commitment to justice and international law. As the world is still witnessing the horrible humanitarian situation and untold human suffering in the Gaza Strip, we call upon the United Nations Security Council to fully uphold its responsibility under the Charter, particularly those contained in Article 12 and 24, and we take decisive action to end the cycle of conflict and impunity. We further urge all parties to agree to an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire, and to ensure appealing access to humanitarian assistance, including food, water, medical supplies, and shelter. Tanzania underscores the importance of dialogue as the only viable and durable solution to the conflict. Surely, there's no military solution to the conflict, so concerned parties must engage in constructive dialogue and sincerely work towards lasting peace, seek truth and reconciliation, and undertake confidence-building measures, including the release of hostage and cessation of all acts of violence against civilians. Co-chairs, Tanzania has recognized the state of Palestine for over 6 decades and full support its admission as a full member of United Nations. The admission of Palestine as a member of this important organization will only reaffirm its purpose and principle, this is undermining them. The people of Palestine who have been denied their homeland and with secure borders, forced to live as refugees in their lands, and subjected to untold suffering, deserve the permanent reliefs. This August Assembly must continue to provide opportunity for the admission of the State of Palestine as a member of our organization. And the Security Council must refrain from preventing the actualization of this long-expired goal. Co-chair, in conclusion, Tanzania reiterates its commitment to multilateral efforts aimed at achieving peace, security, dignity for both Palestinians and Israelis. We remain ready to work in solidarity with the member states to ensure the realization of the two-state solution and to restore hope, stability, and justice to the people of the region. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le
I
représentant
thank
de
the
la
representative
République
of the United Republic of Tanzania, and I give the floor to the representative of Guinea.
Messieurs les coprésidents, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs,
Co-chairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, on behalf of His Excellency, General Mamadi Doumbouya, President of the Republic of Guinea, welcomed the joint initiative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic, that is the initiative to convene this international conference dedicated to the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. My delegation fully subscribes to the statement delivered by Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. Co-chairs, the Republic of Guinea reiterates its unswerving support to the Palestinian cause, which is underpinned not just by the principles of international law, but also the values of brotherhood, dignity, and humanity, to which the people of Guinea are strongly committed. The Republic of Guinea, true to its historic commitment to justice, peace, and international security, recognized the state of Palestine already in November 1988. We believe that there is an overriding necessity to recognize the state of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital and to grant it fully fledged member status within the United Nations Organization. The right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, to freedom, and to an independent state is both what justice requires, but it is also an essential precondition for lasting peace in the Middle East. The two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security within recognized borders based on 1967 lines, remains the only viable path that is in keeping with international law. Co-chairs, we cannot ignore the human tragedy currently unfolding in the Gaza Strip. Too many lives have been lost. Children, women, and entire families have been decimated. Many people are still missing. Essential civilian infrastructure has been seriously damaged, if not completely destroyed. This situation cannot go on. We bear the collective moral responsibility to put an end to it, and definitively so, because the safeguarding of the values and principles which underpin our humanity are at stake. The eyes of the world, the eyes of our people are upon us. They are
à faire
judging us
prévaloir
on
le droit
our collective
international,
capacity to
ainsi
ensure
que
that
les idéaux
international
de
law
paix,
and the
de
ideals of peace,
justice et de
justice,
dignité humaine
and
qui ont
moral
sous-tendu la
dignity,
création
which
de
are the
notre
bedrock of
organisation.
our organization,
Le silence,
to ensure they
l'indolence,
prevail.
l'inaction ou l'indifférence
Silence,
serait une
inaction, and
trahison non seulement des
indifference
principes fondateurs de cette
would
organisation,
constitute a
mais
betrayal,
aussi de
not
notre
only to the
propre
fundamental
humanité.
principles of this
Pour sa
organization,
part, la
but to
République de
our
Guinée
very
appelle à un
own
cessez-le-feu
humanity.
immédiat,
The Republic of Guinea
total et
calls for
durable.
an immediate,
Nous
total,
réaffirmons
and
que toute
lasting
solution
ceasefire.
durable et
We
viable
reiterate that
passe
any
nécessairement
lasting and
par la
viable
fin des
solution
violences, de
necessarily
l'occupation et
requires
des
an end
activités
to
de
the violence, the
colonisation dans les
occupation,
territoires
and settlement
palestiniens,
activities
y compris à
on
Jérusalem-Est,
Palestinian territory, including
la
in East
reconnaissance
Jerusalem,
pleine et
the
entière
recognition, full
d'un
and
État
comprehensive
palestinien
recognition
souverain,
of a sovereign
indépendant,
and
avec
independent
Jérusalem-Est comme
Palestinian
capitale,
state, with East
vivant
Jerusalem
en
as
paix
its
aux côtés
capital,
de l'État
living
d'Israël,
in peace
le respect
side by side
scrupuleux
with
des
Israel,
résolutions pertinentes des
meticulous
Nations
respect
Unies
for relevant
et un accès
UN
complet et sans
resolutions,
entrave
and
de l'aide
full and
humanitaire.
unfettered access for
Messieurs les coprésidents,
the
Excellences,
delivery of
Mesdames et
humanitarian
Messieurs,
assistance.
aujourd'hui
Co-chairs,
plus que
ladies and
jamais,
gentlemen,
la République
today,
de Guinée
more
se
than
tient aux
ever,
côtés de
the
ceux
Republic
qui
of Guinea
choisissent
stands
le
shoulder to
dialogue
shoulder with those
plutôt
who've
que la
opted for
confrontation.
dialogue over
Nous sommes
confrontation.
ici pour
We're
affirmer que
here
la paix n'est
to
pas une
reaffirm that
utopie,
peace is
mais
not a
bien une
utopia.
exigence.
It
La paix
is a
exige
must,
du courage
and peace
politique.
calls for political courage.
Le temps est venu de traduire
It
les
is high
déclarations de
time to
principe
translate
en actes
declarations
concrets
of
à travers
principles
une feuille de route
into
claire et
concrete action.
consensuelle
We need
afin
a
de donner une
clear-cut,
réalité politique
consensus-based
à
roadmap
l'espoir du
to
peuple
ensure
palestinien.
that the
Nous
hopes of the
restons
Palestinian
convaincus
people
que la
become a political
coexistence
reality.
pacifique entre l'État de
We
Palestine et
remain
l'État
convinced
d'Israël
that peaceful
est non seulement
coexistence between the
possible,
states of
mais également
Palestine and
nécessaire.
Israel is not only
C'est au nom
possible
de
but
notre humanité
necessary.
commune
It is
que
in the
nous
name
devons
of our
saisir
common humanity
l'opportunité
that
de
we
la
must
présente
seize
conférence
the
pour
opportunity offered by
raviver
this conference
définitivement
to definitively
l'espoir d'une
revive
paix
the
durable
hope of
entre
lasting
Israël et
peace
la
between
Palestine
Israel and
dans
Palestine,
le respect
with
de la
respect
dignité
for
humaine
human
et de la
dignity and
solidarité
the
entre les peuples.
solidarity among peoples. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant
I
de
thank the
Guinée pour son
representative of
intervention.
Guinea for that statement.
Je donne la parole
And I give the
à
floor
Madame la représentante
to the
du
representative
Guyana.
of Guyana.
Your Excellencies, co-chairs, Guyana aligns itself with the statement delivered by the permanent representative of Barbados on behalf of the member states of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. I commend you both, co-chairs of the working groups, for your preparations for the convening of this conference. Excellencies, following the General Assembly's adoption in 1947 of Resolution 181, in which it decided on the establishment of an independent Arab state and an independent Jewish state. The independent Jewish state, Israel, was created and recognized in 1949. However, almost 8 decades later, and with the formation and recognition of more than 80 new sovereign states by the UN, the establishment of an independent state of Palestine is still outstanding. Implementation of the two-state solution is a collective responsibility of the General Assembly, some aspects of which are common to all member states, while others are differentiated. Recognition of the state of Palestine is at the core. The two-state solution is only partially implemented due to the twin problem of the non-recognition of the state of Palestine by some member states and Israel's ongoing occupation of the Palestinian territory. Guyana therefore calls on all member states still to do so, to recognize the state of Palestine. We also call on Israel to comply with the advisory opinion of the ICJ regarding its unlawful occupation of the Palestinian territories. Excellencies, we are meeting against the backdrop of an unprecedented war in Gaza, characterized by repeated violations of international law. The onus is on all member states to be vigilant and consistent in their defense of international law on the question of Palestine. There should be no double standards and no silence and inaction when the rule of law is being violated. While most member states have been vocal in their condemnation of the ongoing atrocities in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, we urge every member of this organization to redouble their efforts to bring this tragedy to an end. Turning to actions needed for positive change, let me highlight 3 points. First, the ongoing situation in the occupied Palestinian territory remains a serious threat to international peace and security, and the Charter empowers the Security Council to respond to such threats decisively. Regrettably, the Council, as a collective, has not yet achieved the level of political will necessary to take those decisions. Second, action is needed in defense of the United Nations, humanitarians, medical personnel, journalists, and other professionals who continue to be the targets of indiscriminate and illegal actions by the occupying power. UNRWA, which has performed a stabilizing role in the OPT since its establishment in 1948, suffered the brunt of attacks against the UN. Last week, we were told that OCHA is next. This trend must not be allowed to continue, as it sets a dangerous precedent. Third, member states must be prepared to take bilateral action where it is necessary to stem the means of destruction used by the occupying power to weaken the two-state solution. Member states must continue working until an independent state of Palestine is established, pursuant to the relevant United Nations resolutions and in line with the pre-1967 borders. We must dissuade all actions that undermine this goal. In this context, we call on Israel to hand over all remittances being held for the Palestinian Authority. Excellencies, allow me to conclude by reaffirming our full support for the implementation of the two-state solution. Ghana looks forward to continuing its contributions to this goal, including through implementation of the recommendations emanating from this conference. I thank you.
Je remercie Madame la
I
représentante
thank the
du Guyana pour
representative
son
of Guyana
intervention et je
for
donne la
her
parole à
statement,
Monsieur
and
le
I give the floor
représentant
to
du
the
Kenya.
representative of Kenya.
Co-chairs, excellencies, distinguished delegates, Kenya aligns itself with the statement read by the Republic of Uganda on behalf of the non-aligned movement. We also align with the African Union position that espouses the achievement of a two-state solution through negotiations founded on relevant UN resolutions and supports homegrown solutions based on socio-cultural tolerance. My delegation would now like to state the following in our national capacity. For decades, the Middle East has endured an ever-deepening occupation, cycles of violence, and the collapse of every major peace negotiation. The spiraling increase of civilian casualties, widespread displacement, and catastrophic humanitarian emergencies continue to imperil not only Palestinian aspirations for sovereignty and Israeli security, but also the stability of the entire region and the authority of international law. The two-state solution is deemed as the sole framework capable of delivering just, lasting peace. Unfortunately, it's now on the brink of collapse. Co-chairs, Kenya is concerned that the absence of decisive and coordinated action, unilateral measures, hardened stances of an irreversible status quo of protracted conflict will prolong human suffering and strategic fragmentation. In this regard, we take note that this conference is one of the few chances remaining to transform consensus into tangible, irreversible steps and propose the following actions embedded in 3 core pillars. First, ceasefire and humanitarian relief to secure an immediate, verifiable ceasefire, ensure the unconditional release of all hostages, and guarantee unfettered delivery of humanitarian assistance and the full withdrawal of military forces from Gaza. Second, implementing the two-state solution with security guarantees by convening a United Nations-backed mechanism and establishing robust, jointly monitored security arrangements to protect civilians on both sides,
linked to benchmarks that reinforce the two-state roadmap. Third, instituting time-bound framework to adopt a comprehensive UN resolution mandating clear deadlines and enforcement measures and create a multinational oversight body that builds on the Global Alliance for Implementation to monitor compliance, deter spoilers, and report transparently to the international community. Co-chairs, excellencies, distinguished delegates, the world watches us to see whether we can convert long-standing consensus into concrete, irreversible action. By embracing three core pillars, that's political, economic, and security, we can cement an enduring peace with two states side by side in mutual security and cooperation, and pave the way for a stable, integrated Middle East. Kenya believes that collective and individual measures will help transform long-standing consensus into irreversible steps toward two sovereign states living side by side in peace, security, and mutual respect. In conclusion, we reaffirm our support for the two-state solution and commit to collaborating with member states in joint efforts to secure durable and lasting peace. I thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le
I thank the
représentant du Kenya
representative
pour son
of Kenya
intervention
for
et
his
je donne
statement,
la
and I
parole à
give the
Madame la
floor
représentante de la
to
Tchéquie.
the representative of Czechia.
Distinguished co-chairs, excellencies, we welcome this opportunity to affirm Czechia's long-standing commitment to a peaceful resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This vision is grounded in the establishment of two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace, security, and mutual recognition. We are deeply concerned by the continued violence and humanitarian suffering in the region, and we call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the unconditional release of all hostages, leading to a permanent end of hostilities. Czechia acknowledges the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people for statehood and dignity, just as we affirm Israel's right to exist, free from terror and existential threats. We believe that the only viable path to achieving this vision is through direct negotiations between the two parties. A negotiated agreement remains the sole sustainable means to ensure stability, democratic and economic development, and security for all. Unilateral actions risk undermining the delicate balance required for meaningful dialogue and may further entrench divisions. Excellencies, it is of utmost importance to re-establish a political horizon toward a two-state solution. We urge all parties and international actors to focus on confidence-building measures, regional cooperation, including through frameworks such as the Abraham Accords, and practical steps that can foster trust and pave the way for renewed negotiations. A peace settlement must serve the legitimate interests of both peoples, who rightfully expect tangible outcomes from diplomatic efforts. It is imperative to create conditions that enable Palestinians to establish a viable, independent future, whilst also ensuring that Israelis are not perpetually confronted with critical security concerns. Furthermore, Hamas should no longer pose a threat to Israel and must have no role in Palestine's future governance. Excellencies, achieving a just and lasting peace will require bold and courageous decisions from both Israelis and the Palestinians. The path to a two-state solution is neither simple nor without sacrifice, but it demands leadership that prioritizes the future over the past and reconciliation over retaliation. Both sides must demonstrate the political will to engage in meaningful dialogue, make difficult compromises, and reject extremism in all its forms. Only through such resolve can we hope to transform aspirations into reality. Czechia stands ready to assist in any genuine effort that brings both sides back to the negotiating table and advances the cause of peace. I thank you.
Je remercie Madame la représentante
thank
de
the
la Tchéquie pour son
representative of
intervention. Je
Czechia
donne
for
la
her
parole à
statement.
Monsieur le
And
représentant
I
de
give the
Somalie.
floor to the representative of Somalia.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God, most gracious, most
السيد الرئيس،
merciful, co-chairs,
أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة،
highnesses, excellencies,
السيدات والسادة،
ladies and gentlemen.
يشرف وفد الصومال أن يشارك في هذا
It's our
المؤتمر
honor to
الرفيع
participate in
المستوى
this high-level
الذي
conference
يأتي في وقت
that comes
تتعمق
at
فيه
a
جراح
time when the
المنطقة
wounds of the region
وتتسع
are
فيه
deepening,
دائرة
at a
الظلم
time when the
والمعاناة
cycle of injustice
وتغيب
and
فيه آفاق
suffering
الحلول
is
العادلة
expanding, at a
أمام الشعب
time when
الفلسطيني
the brotherly
الشقيق.
Palestinian people lack
وإذ
prospects
نشكر المملكة
for just
العربية السعودية
solutions. We thank
والجمهورية
the Kingdom of
الفرنسية
Saudi Arabia
على
and the
تنظيم هذا
Republic
المؤتمر
of
الهام،
France for convening this
فإننا
important
نرى في
meeting.
هذا المؤتمر
This
فرصة لا يجب أن تمر
conference is
مرور
an
الكرام،
opportunity that must
بل
not go
لحظة
unnoticed.
فارقة
It
تجدد
is a
فيها
defining moment
الإرادة
for
السياسية
us to renew our
والجماعية
collective
لا
political
للبحث
will,
عن حل
not only to
بل
find
لوضع تنفيذ
solutions,
حل
but
الدولتين
to advance the
على مساره
implementation
الصحيح
of the two-state
بعد أن
solution,
طال
this
تجاهله
solution that has long
وتآكلت
been
معالمه على الأرض.
rejected and overlooked
السيد
and
الرئيس،
eroded.
منذ أكثر من 7 عقود
Co-chairs,
يعاني الشعب
the
الفلسطيني
Palestinian
من
people
احتلال
for more
مستمر
than 7 decades
وحرمان
have been
ممنهج
reeling from
من
ongoing
أبسط حقوقه
occupation.
الوطنية
They have been
والإنسانية،
systematically deprived of
وما
their
زال
most
العالم
basic
يشهد
national and
بصمت
human
في أغلب
rights.
الأحيان التوسع الاستيطاني
The international community has stood silent as the
والانتهاكات اليومية
Palestinians have been reeling on a
واستباحة
daily
المقدسات
basis from
الإسلامية
colonial
والمسيحية
settlement, forced
وتفكيك
displacement,
حياة
blockade,
شعب
daily
كامل
violations.
جيلا
The
بعد جيل.
holy Christian and Muslim
وفي
sites have
خضم
been
هذا المشهد
desecrated
المؤلم
and the
ما زال
life of
الشعب
a whole people
الفلسطيني
have been
يتمسك
fragmented
بحقوقه
generation
المشروعة
after
في الحرية
generation. Despite
والاستقلال
this, the
وتقرير
Palestinian
المصير
people continue to
ويطالب
uphold
بما هو مكفول
their
له
legitimate right
بموجب
to
القانون
freedom,
الدولي
independence, and
وقرارات الأمم
self-determination
المتحدة
as
لا
enshrined
أكثر
in
ولا
international
أقل.
law and UN
ومن
resolutions.
هذا المنطلق
They do not demand
تؤكد
more than
الصومال
this.
موقفها الثابت
In this
والداعم
context, we
بكل
reiterate our
وضوح
unwavering
لحل
support
الدولتين
for the
القائم على
two-state
حدود الرابع
solution
من حزيران
along the
سنة
4 June 1967 borders
وعلى
and on the
أساس قرارات
basis
مجلس
of
الأمن
UN
والجمعية العامة
Security Council
ومبادئ
and General
القانون
Assembly
الدولي
resolutions
ومعاهدة
and on the
السلام
basis of
بما يضمن
international
إقامة
law
دولة
and the
فلسطينية
Arab Peace
مستقلة
Initiative for the
كاملة السيادة
establishment of an
وعاصمتها
independent,
القدس
sovereign Palestinian state
وندعو بكل
with
وضوح
East Jerusalem
إلى
as its
الاعتراف
capital.
الكامل
We
بدولة
call
فلسطين
clearly for the
ومنحها
full
العضوية الكاملة
recognition of the state
بالأمم
of
المتحدة.
Palestine and for its
السيدات
full
والسادة،
admission in the
إن
United
غياب
Nations.
العدالة
Ladies
لا
and
يخلق السلام،
gentlemen,
وإن
injustice
استمرار
does not
الاحتلال
achieve peace.
لا ينتج استقرارا.
Ongoing occupation
إننا
does
نرفض
not
استخدام
generate
المعايير
stability.
المزدوجة
We reject
وانتقائية
double
القانون
standards
الدولي.
and the
لا
selective
يمكن
application
أن
of
ندعو
international
لاحترام
law.
القانون الدولي في
We
مكان
cannot respect
ونتغاضى عن
international
خلقه
law
في
in
مكان
one
آخر.
place and
ولا
overlook
يمكن
its
أن يكافئ
violation in
المحتل
another place. And
ويعاقب
the
الواقع
occupier
تحت
cannot
الاحتلال.
be rewarded and
السيد
the
الرئيس،
people under
إن تنفيذ
occupation
حل
cannot be
الدولتين
punished.
لم يعد خيارا
The
دبلوماسيا
implementation
فحسب.
of the two-state
وندعو
solution
اليوم
is no
إلى
longer a
خطوات
diplomatic
واضحة
option.
لا
We
تحتمل
now call
التأجيل.
today for
أولاً،
clear
الإسراع في
measures
قبول
that
دولة
can no
فلسطين
longer be
كعضو كامل
postponed.
في الأمم
First,
المتحدة.
the state of
ثانياً،
Palestine must be
وقف
admitted as a
كافة
full
الأنشطة
member of the
الاستيطانية
UN.
غير القانونية
Secondly,
فوراً وبلا
all
شروط.
illegal
ثالثاً،
settlement
رفع
activities
الحصار
must
المفروض
come to an end
على قطاع
immediately
غزة
and
وفتح
unconditionally.
ممرات
Thirdly,
إنسانية آمنة
the
ودائمة.
blockade on
رابعاً،
Gaza must be
توفير
lifted
الحماية
and
الدولية
humanitarian
للشعب
safe
الفلسطيني.
corridors must be opened.
خامساً،
Fourthly,
إعادة
international
إحياء
protection must be
مسار
afforded
سياسي
to the
جاد
Palestinians.
وملزم
Fifthly, we
تحت
must
رعاية
revive
دولية
the serious and
متعددة
binding
الأطراف
political
مع
track
آليات
under
واضحة
international
للتنفيذ.
multilateral auspices with a
ختاماً،
clear
السيدات
implementation
والسادة،
mechanisms.
إن الوقت
In
ليس في
conclusion, resolution.
لصالح أحد.
The time is
كل
not
يوم يمر
on
دون
our
حل
side.
هو يوم جديد من الألم
Every day without a solution is a new day of pain, a new day of dashed hopes and erosion of international order. We hope that this conference will be a true turning point where we do not only express intention, but we transition towards actionable implementation and follow-up mechanisms. In this context, we reiterate our clear position. Palestine is not only a humanitarian cause, it is a question of justice, a question of rights and sovereignty. The government and people of Somalia will continue to support this just question in all fora. We believe that freedom is achieved and snatched by justice and is defended in position. Thank you for your kind attention.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant de la Somalie pour son intervention et je donne la parole à Madame la représentante du Cap-Vert.
To the representative of Cabo Verde.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, Cabo Verde aligns itself with the statements delivered on behalf of the G77 and the African Group, and hereby delivers in national capacity. Cabo Verde stands before this high-level conference with profound commitment to peace, international security, and respect for the fundamental principles of international law. Since its independence, our country has upheld its sovereign policy on principles of peaceful cooperation, mutual respect, and the right of all peoples to self-determination and independence in line with the Charter of the UN. The two-state solution for Israel and Palestine represents not only a legal and political imperative, but also the only sustainable way to ensure security, stability, and development for both people. Cabo Verde would like to highlight three fundamental pillars for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and to implement the two-state solution. One, the establishment of the Palestinian state, founded on full sovereignty and territorial integrity, must be grounded in international norms protecting the territorial integrity and historical rights of the Palestinian people. Two, peace will not be sustainable without concrete and balanced security arrangements that ensure mutual protection and trust-building mechanisms between the parties. Coordinated measures must be implemented in a transparent and binding manner, reinforcing both Israel and Palestine's commitment to a future free of hostilities and existential threats. Three, the success of the two-state solution depends not only on political and legal guarantees, but it will only prevail if sustainable economic conditions are also assured. Post-conflict reconstruction must be linked to economic integration strategies, promoting a resilient governance structure, sustainable investments, and effective assistance mechanisms. For Cabo Verde, it is clear that peace cannot reign upon diplomatic commitments alone. For peace to prevail, it must be built on justice, respect for international law, and recognition of the dignity of all peoples. The success of this conference will be measured by the concrete actions we take, ensuring that two states can coexist side by side with security, sovereignty, and prosperity. Cabo Verde is hopeful that this conference will produce effective commitments and tangible results for a just and lasting peace. Cabo Verde reiterates its full support to the implementation of the two-state solution. May this path lead to two neighbor nations living in peace and rebuilding a prosperous future for the generations to come. Thank you.
Je remercie Madame la
I
représentante
thank
du
the
Cap-Vert pour son
representative of
intervention
Cabo
et je
Verde
donne la
for her
parole à
statement. I
Monsieur
give the
le
floor
représentant du
to the
Népal.
representative of Nepal.
Distinguished co-chairs, first let me extend my sincere appreciation to the governments of the French Republic and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this high-level international conference. Excellencies, for nearly 8 decades, the pursuit of just and lasting peace in the Israeli-Palestine conflict has remained elusive. Uncertainty, chaos, violence, and despair dominate the regions over the decades. The situation has further deteriorated since the October 7 terrorist attacks on Israel by Hamas. The region is descending into even greater turmoil and volatility since then. The humanitarian crisis has reached unimaginable levels. Relentless loss of innocent lives, mass displacement, and widespread destructions have unfortunately become the tragic norm. The indiscriminate targeting of civilians, aid workers, and vital infrastructures continues unabated. The world cannot afford to stand by as devastation unfolds. Urgent and decisive action is needed to break this cycle of violence and restore hope for a peaceful future for both Palestinians and Israelis. Excellencies, Nepal strongly condemned the brutal attack on Israel on 7 October 2023, which claimed the lives of hundreds, including 10 Nepali nationals. Equally, we have denounced the indiscriminate use of force against civilians in Gaza. Nepal has consistently called for immediate de-escalations, restraint on end to civilian casualties, and protections of public and private properties. We also call for providing immediate, unrestricted, and adequate humanitarian assistance to the disparate civilians in Gaza. Humanity must be preserved, and human rights must be respected in all circumstances. It is also crucial that international laws, including the international humanitarian laws, are fully respected by all. We call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages taken by Hamas, including Bipin Joshi from Nepal. We are gravely concerned about his and others' health and well-being. Co-chairs, Nepal has long supported a two-state solution, advocating for Israeli and Palestinians to coexist peacefully within the recognized international borders based on international law and relevant UN resolution. We affirm our support for all efforts aimed at achieving a just, peaceful, and lasting solution to the questions of Palestine. We urge both Israel and Palestine to exercise utmost restraint, to end hostilities, resort to dialogue and diplomacy, and uphold internationally recognized agreements, including the two-state solution. Stopping ongoing violence and securing of durable ceasefire is crucial to create conditions for diplomacy and prevent further civilian casualties. On this score, we appreciate the efforts made by the United States of America, Qatar, and Egypt for achieving permanent ceasefire. The United Nations and international community must take all necessary measures to restart negotiations, establish a framework for lasting peace, and find a just, peaceful, amicable, and lasting political solutions to the problem. For this, myopic visions and narrow political interests must be set aside. This is crucial to prevent this crisis from deepening into a catastrophe. We stand by our conviction that a political resolutions grounded in two-state solutions is the most effective path to ending suffering, breaking the cycle of violence, and securing long overdue peace for both Palestinian and Israeli civilians. In conclusion, co-chairs, let's unite in pursuit of a just and lasting solution to one of the world's most prolonged and complex challenges. Let's ensure that peace prevails in the regions and beyond. And let's build a future for both Israelis and Palestinians grounded in peace, justice, and coexistence. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le
I
représentant du
thank
Népal
the
pour son
distinguished
intervention et
representative
je
of
donne la
Nepal for his
parole à
statement. I
Madame la
now give the floor
représentante de
to
Saint-Vincent et les
the
Grenadines.
representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. St. Vincent and the Grenadines extends its appreciation to the co-chairs of the conference, His Excellency Jean-Noel Barrot, Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs of the Republic of France, and His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We welcome your efforts in convening this important high-level meeting on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. Excellencies, today we must accept the harsh reality that our multilateral system is fractured, and this breakdown has in turn allowed the erosion of the principles of international law, including those set out in the Charter of the United Nations, as well as the legally binding resolutions adopted by the Security Council. These principles are not abstract ideals, but safeguards for our peaceful coexistence. This is why St. Vincent and the Grenadines regards this conference as a critical opportunity to rebuild trust among states through the recommitment in good faith to the principles of international law and the two-state solution as set out in the Security Council Resolution 242/1967. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East has for too long assailed the people of Gaza, their suffering being a tragic testament of the consequences of setting aside international law that was designed to, at a minimum, put an end to such a conflict. The Palestinian people continue to contend with illegal occupation, dispossession, and harsh settler colonialist policies without delay in recognizing an independent state of Palestine, being a contributing factor to the toxic status quo. The cycle of death and destruction, ongoing impunity, and the violations of our international framework cannot be allowed to continue. International law, including the principles embedded in the Charter of the United Nations, can neither be selectively applied nor sporadically upheld. As a modern civilization, if we are credible defenders of peace, then we must ultimately be consistent defenders of international law. Within this context, St. Vincent and the Grenadines reaffirms its support to a two-state solution that guarantees that both Israel and Palestine can live side by side in peace and security within internationally recognized borders based on the pre-1967 lines. Every state and people desirous of such ambitions are deserving of achieving it. Excellencies, the Charter of the United Nations is clear in its preamble. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. This solemn commitment must serve as our collective moral compass. It is our sincere hope that this conference will mark a turning point in the region, as well as in our global commitment to peace, stability, and multilateral cooperation. We express our hope that the work of the working groups would amount to more than just an academic exercise, but instead would contribute tangibly to a shift in the discourse and the direction of this long-standing issue, operating as launching pads for action. We recognize, however, that to be impactful, our commitments throughout this conference must be backed by concrete, measurable action. Now is not the time for fatigue. We can no longer simply stand in solidarity. The need to implement a two-state solution has become more urgent than ever. And to this end, we
Je remercie Madame la représentante de Saint-Vincent
of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for her
intervention.
statement.
Je remercie Madame la représentante
I thank the representative of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Cuba.
Señores copresidentes, apoyamos las intervenciones de Uganda en representación del MNOAL y de Venezuela en nombre del Grupo de Amigos en Defensa de la Carta de la ONU. Cuba ha sido consistente en su apoyo al pueblo palestino, al que han privado del ejercicio de sus derechos, incluido el derecho inalienable a la libre determinación, y ha denunciado las atrocidades cometidas por más de 75 años por Israel. Cuba ha demandado una solución amplia, justa y duradera sobre la base de la creación de dos estados que permita al pueblo palestino ejercer su derecho a la libre determinación y a disponer de un estado libre y soberano dentro de las fronteras anteriores a 1967, con Jerusalén Oriental como su capital y el retorno de los refugiados como premisas indispensables para la solución del conflicto. Cuba participó en la reunión ministerial extraordinaria del Grupo de la Haya, iniciativa de un grupo de estados interesados en coordinar acciones dirigidas a obtener resultados palpables y avanzar en acciones urgentes para hacer efectivo el cese al fuego inmediato y permanente en la franja de Gaza y la retirada de las fuerzas de ocupación israelí. Nos hemos unido al llamado de la inmensa mayoría de la comunidad internacional para lograr una acción decisiva que ponga fin a una de las injusticias más prolongadas de nuestro tiempo, agravada en estos últimos 2 años en los que Israel ha perpetrado impunemente contra el pueblo de Palestina crímenes de lesa humanidad, castigos colectivos, apartheid y genocidio. El número de muertos, heridos, desplazados, así como la destrucción de hospitales, escuelas, mezquitas, entre otras infraestructuras civiles en franca violación del derecho internacional humanitario, nos coloca frente a una dolorosa realidad que lacera la conciencia de la humanidad. La masacre perpetrada contra la bloqueada Gaza ha provocado una crisis humanitaria sin precedentes que ha sumido en el terror, la muerte y la destrucción masiva a ese territorio donde, según informaciones de Naciones Unidas, millones de civiles están atrapados, luchando contra el hambre, la enfermedad y el desplazamiento constante. Persisten las prácticas colonizadoras israelíes y se expande su violencia en Cisjordania, incluido Jerusalén Oriental. No podemos permitir que los asentamientos ilegales y la represión se normalicen. Excelencias, es imposible
It is
hablar de la
impossible
situación
to
en
talk of the
Palestina
situation in
sin
Palestine
denunciar la complicidad
without speaking
histórica
out
del
about
gobierno
the
de los
historical
Estados
complicity
Unidos,
of the
quien
United
es
States government,
responsable también del
which is
genocidio
also
al
responsible
utilizar de
for the
manera
genocide
reiterada
by
su derecho al
repeatedly
veto en
using
el
its
Consejo de
veto
Seguridad
right
para
in the Security Council
impedir la
to block
implementación de
the
un cese al
implementation
fuego
of a
que
ceasefire
detenga la masacre
that would
y
halt
haga
the
valer la
massacre
demanda
and
de la
would
comunidad
uphold the will of
internacional.
the international
La
community.
parálisis del Consejo
The
de
paralysis
Seguridad
of the
es
Security
una
Council
afrenta
is an affront
aprovechada por Israel para
harnessed
continuar
by
con su
Israel
política
to
criminal
continue its
sin
criminal
temor a las
policies
consecuencias.
without fear of
Urgen
consequence.
acciones concretas en este
Concrete
órgano
action is
para
urgently
frenar el
needed
genocidio
in
en
this body
curso,
to halt
permitir
the
la
ongoing
entrega de
genocide,
ayuda
to
humanitaria
allow the
suficiente y sin
unrestricted
restricciones y
delivery of
garantizar
sufficient
el trabajo
humanitarian aid
vital
and to
de UNRWA.
guarantee the vital work of UNRWA.
Más de
More than
145 países
145
ya
countries
reconocen al Estado
already
de Palestina.
recognize the state of Palestine.
La admisión plena de Palestina como
The
Estado
full membership
miembro
of
de la
Palestine
ONU
in the United
no
Nations
resiste más dilación.
can no
Es
longer be
vital que se
delayed.
inicie la
It is
reconstrucción
vital
de
to
Gaza,
begin the
se
reconstruction
creen
of
las
Gaza,
condiciones
to
para el
create
regreso de los
conditions for the
desplazados,
return of displaced
se retiren
persons,
de forma
to
total e
ensure the full
incondicional
and
las
unconditional
fuerzas de
withdrawal
ocupación
of the
israelíes y
Israeli
se
occupying
cumpla con lo
forces
dispuesto en los
and
acuerdos
to
alcanzados
implement
entre
the
las
agreements
partes.
reached between
La
the parties.
aspiración de que este
The
foro
aspiration
brinde
that this forum
perspectivas
will
reales
provide
para una
real
solución
prospects for
justa,
a just,
permanente y
lasting, and
duradera del
sustainable
conflicto
solution to the
es
conflict
compartida
is
por
something
millones
that
de
is shared by
personas en el
millions of
mundo.
people around the
No
world.
los defraudemos.
Let us not
La
fail them.
justicia para Palestina
Justice for
no
Palestine
puede esperar más.
can wait no longer.
Actuemos con la
Let us
urgencia que
act
la
in
humanidad
line with the
demanda, que
urgency
el
that
pueblo
humanity is
palestina
demanding
necesita
and that the
como condición
Palestinian people need
ineludible para
as
alcanzar
a
una
crucial
paz
condition for
justa,
achieving a
duradera
just,
y
lasting, and
permanente
sustainable
en
peace
el Oriente
in the Middle
Medio.
East.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Je remercie Monsieur le
I
représentant
thank
de
the
Cuba pour sa
representative of
déclaration
Cuba for his
et
statement.
je donne la
I
parole
now give the floor
à Monsieur le représentant des Maldives.
to the representative of the Maldives.
Co-chairs, distinguished delegates, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This conference must mark a turning point to end the Israel-Palestinian conflict. It's a historic opportunity to restore justice and enforce accountability. For a region long shrouded in conflict and suffering, this conference can create momentum to realize two-state solution. In 1947, the General Assembly promised that two peoples could live side by side in peace, dignity, and sovereignty. The reality today is stark. Over 100,000 Palestinians wounded, 50,000 killed, more than 17,000 of them children. The world cannot stand in idle while children die from deliberately imposed hunger. This is unfolding before our own eyes. Yet Israel's actions remain impervious to pleas. Its impunity blocking every attempt to end the suffering. We must not normalize such devastation or become desensitized to the loss of innocent life. In moments like this, diplomacy and multilateralism must not retreat. They must rise. We need more action, not just condemnation, more cooperation, and less polarization. The Maldives stands today with unwavering moral clarity. We may be small, but we have never wavered in standing for what is right. This is why we recognized the state of Palestine in 1988. This is why the Maldives has filed a declaration of intervention at the ICJ for the application of the Genocide Convention in Gaza Strip. This is why we argued before the court that Israel's action violate Palestinians' human rights and demanded humanitarian access. Let us begin with the truth. the state of Palestine exists. 147 countries in this hall recognize it, and more have expressed their intent to do so. The Palestinian flag flies outside this hall. Its sovereignty and its people must not be erased. From Gaza to West Bank to East Jerusalem, Palestinians have the inalienable right to remain, to return, and to govern a state of their own freely and fully. The targeting of UNRWA must stop. Defunding a humanitarian lifeline during famine and massacre is not policy, it's cruelty. Humanitarian workers are not the enemy, nor are journalists. And aid is not optional, nor is the obligation to protect civilians. The Maldives believes in a just, lasting solution: 2 states, 2 peoples, and 1 peace. But there can be no peace without justice. Israel must be held accountable for the lives it has taken, for the homes it has destroyed, for the future it has killed, and for the hopes it has extinguished. Reparations, restitutions, and redress is the bare minimum. The Maldives supports Arab Reconstruction Plan with technical expertise, financial support, and moral leadership, and we urge others to do the same. This is why we begin to restore humanity to a people who have lost everything. Let every child in Palestine grow with dignity and hope for the future they deserve. I thank you.
Je remercie Monsieur le représentant
I thank
des Maldives
the
pour son
representative
intervention
of the
et je donne la
Maldives for
parole à
their
Monsieur
statement,
le
and I give the
représentant de la
floor
Ligue des
to the
États
representative
arabes.
of the League of Arab States.
يسعدني أن أقف على هذا المنبر اليوم مرتديا جناح دولة فلسطين كأكبر تعبير عن تضامن جامعة الدول العربية مع دولة فلسطين المستقلة، وأن ألقي كلمة معالي السيد أحمد أبو
In the honor of Palestine, to express our solidarity with the
الذي
state of
حال
Palestine.
احترامه للوائح الإجرائية للجمعية العامة دون إلقائه الكلمة قبل مغادرته
Here I present the statement of the Secretary General of the League of Arab States, who was unable to make the statement himself. At the outset, allow me to express my thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for chairing this meeting at a difficult time, which is not enabling a serious effort towards peace. This international conference, with such a broad-based participation, allows us to focus on the crime of the century, which reminds us of the somber times of history, and we hope that it will never happen again. We think that those that were victims of crimes against humanity would understand the sense of humanity, that those who had lived through ethnic cleansing would never practice it, that those who were victims of genocide and its horrors would not be tempted to commit this crime of genocide that we are seeing today. The plans of which have been announced in Gaza and the OPT. We must denounce this crime in all of its gravity and the tragedy that it causes. They are the continuum of another crime, that is occupation. The crime that the ICJ has asked to be brought to an end as soon as possible. What we're seeing today in Gaza, the withdrawal of stability and security in the region, is indeed the outcome of the ongoing occupation. This is the price being paid by Palestinians, a price paid in blood, a price paid by the populations across the region in terms of the stability and future. It is the price paid by the entire world in terms of stability and security. It's an extremely high price that we are all paying for the system of apartheid and occupation to remain on this land. The vision set out by the states, representatives of civil society and organizations during the preparatory meeting within the 8 thematic working groups that were cited in the outcome document very clearly show that there is clear international will and that it represents the majority for the Israeli settlement building to stop. It also shows that another future is possible for the region, that is, for peaceful coexistence. But this future will only happen where there is a viable Palestinian state that can be a fully fledged member of the United Nations to do away with the stain that we have at the moment. The League of Arab States remains committed to the Arab Peace Initiative adopted in Beirut 23 years ago. That is the full withdrawal from Arab lands and the end of occupation against the normalization, the integration, and peaceful coexistence. This vision hasn't, however, been reciprocated. Rather, it has been countered by arrogance and nationalism based on religious sectarian views that will lead the region to an unknown future. If everyone, particularly civil organizations, are not involved in this process, there will be no change. In conclusion, this conference represents a turning point for the Middle East, for Palestine, in Syria, Lebanon, and elsewhere. The League of Arab States will continue to strive alongside Saudi Arabia and France, alongside the chairs of the working groups, with the immense majority of states, peace-loving states in the General Assembly, this democratic forum. We will continue to work for all states and all organizations to commit to ensure that Palestine is recognized at the 80th General Assembly session, and the League of Arab States will continue to support an independent Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital, based on the proposals made by France, the UK, and peace-loving states. Thank you. I thank the representative of the League of Arab States for that statement. This brings us to an end of the time that we have for this general debate session. The general debate will continue this afternoon at 3 p.m. in this hall. The meeting is adjourned.